Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Shyam Kagod here. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, can you please give me a thumbs up? Let me know that I'm audible to you so that we can start the discussion. Done. Thanks a lot. So, before we start the discussion for the day, what we have discussed yesterday. What did we discuss yesterday? We started with the concept of inflation, correct? We started with the idea of inflation, right? Let me do a mind map so that you understand how do you prepare mind maps, how do you use it to revise, etc., etc. So yesterday we started with the concept of inflation, and in inflation, what we have discussed, we discussed what is the definition of inflation, correct? That was the first point. What is the definition of inflation? Inflation is nothing but persistent rise in the price level of basket of commodities. And I told you one point, always talk about basket, that is group of commodities, not in individual commodity. Then the classification of inflation. We discussed classification of inflation. And in classification, what we have discussed? We have basically discussed classification under two heads. One was based on the rate of inflation. Based on the rate of inflation, moderate rate of inflation, hyperinflation, etc. Second one was based on the causes of inflation. Based on the causes of inflation, right? For example, in case of causes, we have discussed how demand side factors will cause a demand pull inflation, and how the cost side factors will contribute to cost push inflation. Demand pull and cost push inflation. Apart from this, we also discussed structural inflation, correct? All of you have revised it. We have discussed structural inflation. How, right? Let's say how hoarding will cause inflation, how cartelization will cause inflation. We have discussed all of this. How structural inflation will be caused, right? How hoarding will cause inflation, how cartelization will cause inflation. In fact, we have also discussed a concept of imported inflation, imported inflation as well as greedflation. Imported inflation as well as greedflation, right? What is this greedflation? Why it is becoming a concern now? Why this is called as imported inflation, etc. Then we have discussed. Then what we have discussed? We have discussed two measures of inflation. Two measures of inflation. One is WPI. Second one is CPI. One is a WPI, second one is CPI. WPI stands for Wholesale Price Index. Wholesale Price Index. This is published by the Ministry of Commerce, that is the economic advisor to the Ministry of Commerce. This is published for every month. The base year for the calculation of WPI is 2011 and 12. There are 697 commodities in the basket of WPI. It consists of only the goods, no services are included. In addition to that, I told you there is a committee recommendation, Ramesh Chand committee recommendation. Ramesh Chand committee recommendation. Ramesh Chand committee recommendation basically says that one, we will have to change the base year. Base year right now is 11 and 12. We will have to change it to 2017 and 18. And today we will discuss base year. Have patience. Second, we do not include services as of now, but we should include services and restructure the whole basket of WPI, which means instead of 697, the committee has recommended that total number of commodities should be 1196. Some of the new commodities that need to be added, right? For example, the type of rice, green tea, etc., etc. Yesterday we have discussed that. That is WPI. What about CPI? Consumer Price Index. It measures inflation at the retail level. I repeat, it measures inflation at the retail level. Retail level means in a market where you will purchase goods and services, I will purchase goods and services. That is called as the retail market. So it measures inflation at the retail level. Second point, it is published for every month, and the authority that publishes CPI is CSO. Third, it includes both goods and services. We measure inflation at the rural level, we measure inflation at the urban level, and we also measure inflation for the whole of India. At the rural level, in the basket of commodities, there are 460 commodities. In the urban level, 448 commodities are there. And the overall India, 299 commodities are present. After that, we have discussed what is the impact of inflation. What is the impact? What is the impact of inflation? What is the impact of inflation? Point number one, it will reduce purchasing power of the customers. All of you agree with me? It will reduce the purchasing power of the customers, right? I could have purchased more goods and services, but because of inflation, now I'll be able to purchase lesser goods and services with the same amount of money. Second, it will also reduce, it will also reduce the real rate of returns. Right? I told you yesterday, for example, if you keep 100 rupees in your savings bank account, you'll get 4% rate of interest. But the inflation rate today in the market is around 6%, which means even if you make investment, earn interest on it, you'll have to pay extra money from your pocket in order to purchase same set of goods and services after the time period is over. Right? That is basically the problem with inflation having an impact on investments. Then apart from that, we also discussed, right, inflation having an impact on exports from the country. Rather than exporting more, you might end up importing more. In addition to the impact of inflation, we also discussed why inflation is needed. Do you remember that? Why inflation is needed? What is the need for having inflation? Why should we target inflation of 4%? Why should we not have inflation of 0%? I told you it will help. It will help in having a higher demand in the market. It means a demand is there in the market. It also means growth is experienced by the economy. Inflation is required so that there is no lesser demand. Otherwise, if deflation is there, people will start postponing their consumption with expectation of, right, drop in the prices in the future. So these are some of the reasons why we actually say inflation is actually needed, but not very high rate of inflation, moderate rate of inflation. For example, in case of India, our target rate of inflation is 4%. Then after this, we have discussed inflation targeting or monetary policy framework agreement. Monetary policy framework agreement. I told you the role of Reserve Bank of India. RBI role is simple. With monetary policy framework agreement, which was signed in 2015 and came into force from 2016, under that, Government of India, after consulting RBI, please remember this, Government of India, after consulting with RBI, has decided that the inflation target that RBI should maintain is 4%. That is, RBI should ensure that 4% is the inflation rate. And what kind of inflation rate? That is also very important. Which inflation rate? Is it core inflation? Is it headline inflation? Is it WPI? Is it CPI? If you remember it correctly, I said this is headline CPI. This is basically headline CPI, right? So headline CPI should be 4%. If it crosses more than 4%, maximum allowed limit is 6%. And if it falls below 4%, the lowest allowed limit is 2%. So RBI should maintain inflation in the range of 2% to 6%. That is the range that has been given as a target by Government of India to Reserve Bank of India. Now, what if inflation crosses more than 6%? Falls below 2% for three consecutive, I repeat, for three consecutive quarters. In such a situation, Reserve Bank of India has to give a written explanation to Government of India. They have to give a written explanation to Government of India. That is basically the monetary policy framework agreement, or famously referred to as flexible inflation targeting. And after that, we discussed two very important concepts. One is deflation, and the second one is disinflation. We have discussed the deflation yesterday, correct? We have discussed deflation yesterday. What is deflation? Deflation simply means price levels are not increasing, price levels are actually falling down. In fact, if you have seen or if you remember yesterday's explanation, I had given numbers like this. Imagine right now the price level for basket of commodities is 100 rupee. What if the price levels instead of increasing will fall down to 90 rupees? Will fall down to, right, let's say 78 rupees. Will fall down to, let's say 71 rupees. So if you see in this example, we are seeing that price levels are actually falling down. Is it okay? In this example, price levels are falling down. And this situation is called as a deflation. Deflation simply means there is a negative inflation rate. Negative, that is, price levels are not increasing, price levels are decreasing. Now come to the second one, disinflation. What do you mean by disinflation? Disinflation means the inflation rate, the rate of inflation is actually slowing down. Now, what do you mean by rate of inflation is slowing down? Let me write a simple series of numbers. Then you please apply CSAT concept. Now, what is the CSAT concept? Let me ask you a very simple question. Let's say right now the price levels for a basket of commodities is 100 rupee. Imagine it will increase to 110 rupee. Further, it will become 115 rupees. And further, it will become, let's say, 116 rupees. Question number one. Please observe and tell me the answer to the questions. Question number one. Are the price levels increasing or decreasing? Start participating. Are the price levels increasing or decreasing? All of you agree? Price levels are increasing. Which means, can I say there is inflation in this example? Is it okay? Because of that, can I say there is inflation in this series? Of course, yes. But please find out what is the inflation rate in successive set of numbers. Just try it out. From here to here, from this time period to this time period, inflation is 10%. All of you will agree, inflation is 10%. And from here to here, it is somewhere around 4.5%. Around 4.5%. And here to here, it is less than 1%. Less than 1%. So based on this, can I say, in this situation, inflation is there, but the rate of inflation is actually slowing down. Let me know. I'll repeat it again. In this series that I've given, inflation is there, but the rate of inflation is actually slowing down. This is called as disinflation. All of you okay with this? So this is referred to as disinflation. Now all of you can understand the difference between deflation and disinflation. Anybody in the classroom who says both are one and the same? Right? In deflation, price levels are not increasing, price levels are decreasing. But in disinflation, price levels are increasing, but the rate of inflation is actually slowing down. That is called as disinflation. Okay, done. So first one is deflation, second one is disinflation, third one is core inflation, and fourth one is headline inflation. Yesterday did we discuss both of them? Please do let me know. Third one is core inflation. Fourth one is headline inflation. What is core inflation and headline? Whenever you talk about headline, you consider the prices of all the commodities in the basket. I will repeat the statement. Whenever you talk about headline, you will consider means for the purpose of calculation, you will take the prices of all the commodities in the basket. And whenever you talk about core inflation, there are certain commodities whose prices are volatile, whose prices are temporary, whose prices are, right, very short lived. Hence, we will exclude these items and we will calculate inflation for the remaining commodities. That is called as core inflation. Okay, and yesterday we have discussed whenever you talk about core inflation from the headline basket, you will exclude food articles, you will exclude fuel articles, calculate the price levels for the remaining commodities. That is basically called as core inflation. Now, next, inflation tax. Next concept is inflation tax. Now, let's say hypothetically you have 100 rupees in your pocket. Listen to me very carefully. Let's say hypothetically you have 100 rupees in your pocket, and this 100 rupee, if you take it to the market, you will be able to purchase certain goods and services. Now the same 100 rupee cash, I repeat, same 100 rupee cash, you will take it to the market after 1 year. Because of inflation, I repeat, because of inflation, don't you think the 100 rupee would have lost a certain purchasing power value? Simple, right? I'm talking about only cash. I'm talking about cash here. You have a cash, 100 rupee, you could go to the market, purchase certain goods and services. But after 1 year, because of inflation, the same 100 rupee note, you will not be able to purchase same set of goods and services, which means there is a reduction in the purchasing power of cash. There is a reduction in the purchasing power of cash. This reduction is called as inflation tax. Is it okay? Right? This reduction in the purchasing power of cash, it is called as inflation tax. Why do we call it as an inflation tax? It is as good as saying, I hope you understand why do we use the term tax there. It is like saying some of the money has been taken away from you in the form of tax. But inflation is not taking money from you. What it is taking away is the purchasing power. All of you okay with this? It is not taking money away from you. Inflation is not taking money. It is simply reducing the purchasing power. And because there is a reduction in the purchasing power, we'll simply refer to this as inflation tax. Next one, concept of stagflation. Right? Very, very famous now. Concept of stagflation. Now, what is this stagflation? To understand stagflation, you need one more concept. I'll come back to this, don't worry. You need one more concept, that is Phillips curve. Phillips curve represents an inverse relationship between unemployment rate and inflation rate. I'll repeat the statement. What is the Phillips curve? It represents an inverse relationship between inflation rate and unemployment rate. Sir, how? What is the relation here? How can you prove it? Etc. I'll discuss it. Listen to me carefully. Phillips curve simply means if inflation rate is high, unemployment rate will be lower. And if inflation rate is low, unemployment rate will be higher. All of you understand inverse? Inverse means opposite. Inverse is simply nothing, means opposite. If inflation goes up, unemployment rate goes down. And if inflation rate is lower, unemployment rate is higher. Now let's try and understand how. Why does it happen, etc. Let me explain it. Point number one. Let's start with this. Whenever inflation rate is higher, is it okay if I say even the growth rate in the economy is higher? Or else you can simply say whenever GDP growth rate is higher, you will generally see inflation rate also starts increasing. Right? Connect the dots. It's easy once you connect the dots. GDP growth rate is higher, inflation rate is also higher. But whenever GDP growth rate is higher, please tell me what about employment? What about employment? What do you think will happen to the employment situation in the economy? Don't you think more people will get the jobs? All of you agree? More people should get the jobs. If employment starts to increase, can I say unemployment rate should start decreasing? Any problem with the sequencing here? If employment starts to increase, what do you think will happen to unemployment? Unemployment rate will start decreasing. Now have a look at this. Inflation rate is higher, unemployment rate is lower. All of you are okay with the first relation here? All of you okay with the first relation? That is, there is a inverse relation between inflation and unemployment. What about the second one? What about the second one? Let's start. Imagine GDP will start falling. Exactly opposite. Imagine GDP will start falling. When the GDP will start falling, point number one, what do you think will happen to the demand? What do you think will happen to the demand for the goods and services? Demand for the goods and services will start decreasing. And when the demand will start decreasing, what do you think will happen to inflation rate? Inflation rate will also start falling down. Remember this. On the other side, if GDP starts to fall down, automatically what will happen to unemployment rate? You tell me. If GDP will start falling down, what do you think will happen to unemployment rate? Unemployment rate will start increasing. All of you okay? Unemployment rate should increase. Now please connect unemployment rate as well as inflation rate. Can you observe an inverse movement between both of them? Can you observe inverse movement between both of them? That is, inflation rate is going down, unemployment rate is going up. So there is an inverse relationship between inflation rate as well as unemployment rate, and this is represented in the form of a curve, in the form of a graph, which is very famously referred to as Phillips curve. Right? Any problem with this? Any problem? Please do let me know. Very famous, by the way. Right? Multiple times has been asked in UPSC prelims. It has been asked in UPSC prelims. Okay, can we go forward now? Very complicated. It's not complicated at all. What is complication in this? It simply shows that you people are not revising. Right? My concern is simply this. I'll explain it again. You people are not revising. Why? Please tell me, do you remember virtuous and vicious cycle? Do you remember a virtuous and vicious cycle? Is it not basically application of virtuous and vicious cycle? Is it not basically the application of virtuous and vicious cycle? When GDP is increasing, those are asking repeat it, I'm repeating it. Listen to me very carefully. If GDP is increasing, on one side, what do you think will happen to demand? Demand is also increasing because more people are getting jobs, they are earning income, demand will increase. And when the demand increases, what do you think will happen to inflation? Inflation will increase. But on the other side, if GDP is increasing, employment will increase. Employment will increase. And when employment increases, what do you think will happen to unemployment? Unemployment will fall down. Right? Can you see an inverse movement between both of them? Inflation goes up, unemployment goes down. That is inverse relationship. That is exactly what is represented in the form of a graph here. Along the x-axis, you're writing unemployment rate. Along the y-axis, you're writing inflation rate. Now, if there is an inverse movement, don't you think you will have a curve which is a downward sloping curve? Is the logic okay? Again, nothing new in this. Do you remember law of demand? If there is an inverse relationship between the two parameters, and if you represent them in a curve, don't you think the curve, that is the line, will be moving downward like this? That is when the inflation rate is, I'll just throw an arbitrary number here. When the inflation rate is 4%, right? Obviously, whatever is the unemployment rate, if the inflation goes up, unemployment rate should come down. That is exactly what is given in the form of a Phillips curve representation. Okay. Now, this is basically the idea of Phillips curve. But next question is it applicable always? Is it applicable in an economy always? Answer is no. This situation is not always applicable in the economy. This is generally the situation. But always this will not happen. Why? Let me give a very simple example of pandemic. Think of it. Right? Let me give a very simple example of pandemic. Please tell me, during pandemic, what do you think happened to inflation rate? During pandemic, that is in the last 3 years, 2021, you tell me, what was the inflation rate? Do you think inflation rate was lesser in India? No, inflation rate was higher because companies were not manufacturing, they were not selling, there was a supply disruption, etc. So inflation rate was higher. Point number one. And point number two, what was the situation for unemployment rate? What was the situation of unemployment rate? Was the unemployment rate lower or higher during inflation? During pandemic, unemployment rate was increasing. All of you will understand, right? Anybody in the classroom who says, no, sir, during pandemic in 2020, unemployment rate was very low in India? No, it was very high. And it makes perfect sense, by the way, because during pandemic, companies stopped manufacturing. Even if they manufactured, buyers were not there in the economy because there was a lockdown. And that is the precise reason demand was very less, inflation rate was very high, unemployment rate was also very high. And what about GDP? What about GDP? GDP took a hit. GDP nosedived. That is, we experienced a recession during pandemic. So whenever these three factors are applicable to an economy, I repeat, whenever these factors are applicable to economy, we will call this situation as a stagflation. Is it okay? That is a situation wherein there is a stagnancy in the growth, but with a higher inflation rate. There is a stagnant growth rate in the economy, but with a very high rate of inflation and a very high unemployment rate. So growth will get stagnated. Stagnant means basically stopped. Growth will not take place. So growth will stop. Unemployment rate very high. Inflation rate very, very high. This situation is called as stagflation. And did we experience stagflation very, very recently? Yes. Various economists agree that we experienced stagflation very, very recently. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Anybody has a problem with this? Next one, base effect. Okay, next one is base effect. Just give me some time. I'll club base effect with one more concept, base here. We'll understand it. Just give me 2 or 3 minutes. We'll discuss base effect, don't worry. Next one is skewflation. What is skewflation? Skewflation is a combination of two terms, skewed plus inflation. Skewflation is a combination of two terms. That is a skewed plus inflation. Skewed means what? Uneven. Skewed basically means uneven. Why this is called as skewflation? Let me ask you a very simple question, but before that, what is the definition? Skewflation refers to a situation wherein some of the commodities there is inflation rate, and in some of the other commodities there is no inflation rate, or they will experience deflation rate. What do you mean by that? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine out of CPI 299 articles, I repeat, imagine out of 299 articles in the CPI, let's say for 70 articles there is a inflation rate. For 70 articles prices have increased. For right, let's say 200 articles prices have not changed. For 200 articles the prices have not changed at all. And for remaining, let's say 29 articles, prices have actually fallen. Please tell me, in this situation, don't you think the price changes in the whole basket is uneven? Let me know. In this example that I've given, this is an example by the way. In this example, don't you think the price changes are uneven? Uneven means not uniform. For some of them, price levels have increased. For some, there is no change in the price. And for some, price levels have decreased. And can I call this as skewed inflation? Is it okay? Can I refer to this as skewed? Skewed means uneven changes in the prices in the basket of commodities. Hence, this is called as a skewflation. Right? That is skewed plus inflation, which is typically observed in India. Economic survey says typically skewflation is observed in Indian economy, where some of the commodities they will experience a high price changes, some of the commodities price changes will not happen, and for some of the commodities, right, price changes will happen but in opposite direction. Prices will not increase but rather they will decrease. Okay, that is skewed inflation, skewflation. Okay, next one, reflation. Next concept is reflation. What is this reflation? Reflation refers to the policies that are followed by the government during recession or during a slowdown so that the economy will recover. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is reflation? Reflation refers to the policy of the government. Whenever the economy is going through a recession or a slowdown, government will follow a policy in order to increase the demand from the market. All of you will agree with me? Right? The government should increase the demand in the market whenever there's a slowdown or whenever there's a recession. And this policy, which government will follow to increase demand, revive the economy, this is called as a reflationary policy. It is a policy used by the government to increase the production, increase the demand in the market, that is to overcome from the slowdown, to overcome from a contraction or a recession in the economy. Such a policy is called as a reflationary policy. Reflationary policies. Can we go forward now? Any problem? Can we go forward? Let me know. Any problem? Any example? My dear, during pandemic, don't you think government of India did exactly the same thing? During pandemic, what did government of India do? Government of India basically ensured through various policies that demand will recover, demand will start increasing. Right? That policy is basically reflationary policy. Is it okay? Can we say that stagflation happens along with slowdown in the growth? Generally, we'll start experiencing a slowdown and we'll start experiencing contraction also. We might even experience contraction during stagflation. Okay. Skewflation not clear. Point number one. Skewed means uneven. English, basic English. Skewed means uneven. In inflation, out of all the commodities in the basket, for some of the commodities, price levels will increase. For some commodities, price levels will not change. And for remaining commodities, you might experience deflation. Is it okay? Is it okay? I'm talking about skewflation. For some of the commodities, prices will increase. For some commodities, prices will not change. And for some commodities, prices will fall. Because there is an uneven movement in the prices, uneven, not uniform change in the prices, that is called as skewflation. Okay? Reflation. I'll repeat it again. Reflation refers to policies of the government using which government during a slowdown or a recession will try to promote production, will try to promote higher demand in the market. It will basically promote demand in the market. Such policies are called as reflationary policies. Okay, done. How inflation leads to high unemployment? Did I say inflation leads to high unemployment? Where did I say that? I don't know what you're listening to, but you're not attentive. I did not say inflation leads to high unemployment. I said when inflation is higher, it also means growth is there. If growth is there, unemployment rate will be lower. So I said inflation is high, unemployment is low. I never said inflation will cause a lower unemployment. You need to connect the dots. Okay. Now, next is imported inflation. Next is imported inflation. Yesterday we have discussed this. Inflation that is caused by the imports is called as imported inflation. Now let me ask you a very simple question. How many of you have read today's Hindu newspaper, or for that matter any other newspaper? How many of you have read today's Hindu newspaper or any newspaper? Please tell me, is government of India worried about crude oil prices or not? Simple question to all of you. Is government of India worried about crude oil prices now? Crude oil prices have started increasing. There is a concern. Why? Because of conflict between Israel and Palestine, or Israel versus Hamas. Right? So will that, if it keeps on increasing, I repeat, if it keeps on increasing, crosses $100, $120 like this, is there a possibility that that will cause imported inflation? Simple argument, by the way. Will that not cause imported inflation? Answer is yes, by the way. And please understand, imported inflation can also be caused in a different way. In a different way. How? There is a concept called as exchange rate. There is this idea called as exchange rate. What do you mean by exchange rate? Whenever you import something, most of the times, not always, most of the times, you will have to pay in terms of dollars. Is it okay? Whenever you import something into India, most of the times we pay in terms of dollars. Now let's say today for every 70 rupee, for every 70 rupee, I'll be able to purchase $1. But what if, because of internal factors, external factors, etc., $1 is equal to, will become 80 rupees. Now please tell me, can I say because of this, can I say our imports will become costlier? Does it make sense to you or not? Because of this, can I say our imports will become costlier? Because let's take a very simple example. If you're still confused, let's say I'm importing this bottle. Right now, the price of the bottle is $1. I will pay 70 rupees, get $1. I will pay to exporter, I'll get the bottle. But if it becomes $1 is equal to 80 rupees, if exchange rate will become $1 is equal to 80, now to get the same dollar, I will have to pay 80 rupees. That is 10 rupee extra I will have to pay. Get the same dollar, import it and pay $1. So don't you think this bottle after importing into India has become costlier? So I hope you understand. In case of India, we are experiencing both of it. Right? That is technically this is called as rupee depreciation. If you're reading newspaper, very often you'll come across this in the newspaper, that is Hindu newspaper and every other newspaper also. We'll say in this example, rupee has depreciated. Depreciated means what? Rupee's value against the dollar has come down. So now all of you okay if I say imported inflation can be caused because of loss of value of rupee against dollar, as well as it can be caused whenever the prices in the international market will automatically start increasing. Anybody has a problem with this? I'll repeat it again. Imported inflation can be caused whenever rupee will start losing value against the dollar, and it can also be caused whenever the prices of the product in the international market will start increasing. Simply remember these 2 points. Don't worry about what is exchange rate, how do we calculate, can we do something in this, etc., etc. Don't worry. We'll discuss it separately when I take up international trade. Next one is wage price spiral. Next one is wage price spiral. What is this wage price spiral? Let's start. Imagine you are the employer, that is you are the owner of the company, and I'm working for you. Okay, I'm working for you. At least be happy now. You are my boss. Okay, so I'm working for you. What I've seen very recently is that price of tomato has gone up, price of jeera has gone up, price of milk has been increased. So what I'll do, I'll come to you and I'll say, right now you are paying me a salary or wages of, let's say, 100 rupee. Okay, you are paying me wages of 100 rupee. But this 100 rupee is not sufficient. You will ask me, how come it is not sufficient? Until last year, until last month, I was paying same 100 rupee. Then I will tell you, sir, price of milk has gone up. Price of tomatoes, have you seen it? It has also gone up. Price of onion has gone up, etc. So I will show you that prices of all these commodities has gone up, which is nothing but inflation. So you are very kind. You are very kind to me. You will say, okay, in that case, I will not pay you 100 rupee wages. I will increase the wage to 120 rupees. You'll agree with me that the inflation rate is there. You will increase the wages from 100 rupee to 120 rupee. Step number one. Step number two, you please tell me if the price, right, that is the cost that you pay for wages will start increasing, what will happen to production cost? Let me know. What do you think will happen to production cost? Don't you think production cost will increase? And if the production cost increases, what will happen to market prices? Let me know. What do you think will happen to market prices? Market prices will also start increasing. You'll have to increase it, otherwise you'll incur losses. So if the market prices will increase, what will happen to inflation? What do you think will happen to inflation? Again, inflation will start increasing. Now I am consumer in the market. I'm purchasing goods and services. Now I realize, even with 120 rupees, even with higher wages of 120 rupees, again inflation has increased. I'm not happy with 120 rupees. So what I'll do? Again, I'll come to you. Again, I'll simply say, sir, please see, there is inflation in the economy. Right? I know you have increased my wages, but please see, the wages have been increased, but inflation has again increased. So don't you think if inflation has again increased, you will have to further increase my wages? Again, you are very kind to me. You'll say, okay, sir, I will increase it from 120 to 140 rupees. But don't you think this cycle will again repeat itself? Let me know. Don't you think because of this cycle will keep on repeating? It's a spiral. Spiral means continuously. Continuously, it will keep on repeating itself like this. Can I call this as wage price inflation? Let me know. Can I call this as a wage price inflation or wage price spiral? Right? A rise in inflation will lead to a rise in wages, and this circle will keep on appearing, will keep on repeating itself. That is the reason this is called as a wage price spiral or wage price inflation, wage inflation, etc. Can I go forward? Any problem with this? Can I go forward? How do we control such situation? You will have to ensure as a government, you will have to ensure wages are not increased by much. Right? In fact, this earlier was discussed in the context of Britain. It was discussed in the context of Britain. You should not increase wages, right, irrationally like this. Right? It's a challenge. I know it's a challenge. You cannot increase wages by a large margin like this. If you keep on increasing the wages without looking into the inflation, you can give a rise in wages, but not very high rises. The moment you provide a high wage rise and the market price of the commodities will start increasing, let's say even because of higher steel prices, higher right taxation, etc. Definitely, yes, there is going to be a wage price spiral. Okay, done. So this is basically the discussion regarding different concepts associated with idea of inflation. Now, let me discuss two very important concepts here. One is the idea of base year. Listen to this very carefully. It's a very simple concept, but a lot of students get confused here. Listen to me carefully. One is base year. Second one is a base effect. Second one is base effect. Both are different. Both are different. Listen carefully. One is base year. Second one is base effect. Point number one. Let's take a very simple example. I'll ask you a question. Let's say there is a student A who has scored 400 marks, and I ask the same question in every batch. Let's say there is another student B who has scored 500 marks. Now please tell me which of the two students according to you has scored more. Let me see. Based on this data, I'll ask you a very simple question, by the way. Which of the two students has scored more? Do not answer the question. Do not answer. I know most of you will basically say, sir, it is student B. But what if I say student A has appeared in an exam where maximum marks is 500 rupees. Student B has appeared in an exam where maximum marks is, let's say, 800 rupees. I'm sorry, 800 marks. So now based on this, can you say which of the two students has performed better? Is the logic okay? Why I'm talking about all of this? UPSC is not going to ask this, but why? What is the importance? Don't you think you want to make a comparison? Look at this. You want to make a comparison of, let's say, GDP in 2022 and GDP of 2023. Let's say you want to make a comparison of GDP of 2022 as well as 2023. But don't you think from 2022 to 2023, because of inflation, the prices of commodities could have changed? All of you will agree with me? Between 22 and 23, because of inflation, the prices of commodities could have changed. What if I say, let me take a very simple example. Imagine, simple example to make you understand. Imagine in 22 you produced only one final good, market price was 100. What was the GDP for 2022? 100 rupee. All of you will agree? I'm taking very simple numbers, by the way. And let's say in 2023, again you have manufactured only one final good, but because of inflation, I repeat, because of inflation, the price will become 120. Now please tell me, if you make a direct comparison between 22 to 23, has the production changed? Let me know. If you make a comparison, has the production changed? No, production has not changed. One product in 22, another product in 23. But if you look at the GDP numbers, GDP has increased by 20%. How can you explain that? Can I say this rise in the GDP is not because of more production, it is because of inflation? Correct? Everybody will agree with me? This rise in the GDP number is not because more goods have been produced. No. What has changed? It has changed because of inflation rate. That is the reason, please remember this. Whenever you want to make a comparison, you want to compare, let's say, 22 with 21 and say what has happened to the GDP in terms of production value. There is inflation. You will have to remove the impact of inflation. Is it okay? You'll have to remove the impact of inflation on the GDP. Only then you can make a comparison and say, by this much percentage, the value of production has increased. And that is the precise reason. Come to the point now. That is the precise reason we use one reference point. I repeat, we use a reference point or a reference prices which is called as base year. At least now all of you are okay. Why do we need a base year? Please do let me know. All of you okay? Why do we need a base year? Reason is simple. You want to make a comparison from last year to this year by how much percentage GDP has increased. But that's a problem because inflation is there in the economy. So in order to make this impact of inflation nil, in order to remove the impact of inflation, we will take a reference year which is called as a base year. How do we do that? Which is chosen as a base year? Let me give a very simple example. Think of it and do let me know. Can we take 2020 and 21 as a base year? Please think rationally. Can we take 20 and 21 as a base year? You should say, sir, absolutely no. No, you cannot take 20 and 21 as a base year. Why? What was the situation of Indian economy in 20 and 21? We were experiencing recession. We were experiencing a high unemployment rate. We were experiencing a lot of disruption in the economy. So can you take a year where so much of uncertainty, volatility is there as a base year? No, you cannot take it. You cannot take it. Point number one. Point number two. Earlier, I repeat, earlier the practice was once every 5 years. I repeat, earlier the practice was once every 5 years, the base year revision is done. Is it okay? Once every 5 years. Earlier, the base year revision was done. The last time the base year was revised for GDP calculation, we introduced the methodology in 2015. And the base year earlier was 2004, 2005. This base year was changed to 2011 and 2012. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Earlier the practice was we will change the base year once every 5 years. So the base year earlier was 2004 and 5. It was changed to 2011 and 12. Sir, why 2011 and 12? Because if you say 5 years, it should be 2009 and 10. All of you agree? It should be 2009 and 10. Government of India stated that lot of uncertainties are there. I'll tell you the background to this also. There was a recession. There was a recession that was caused in the global market because of USA. Very simple. There was a global recession. Right? Why it happened? What was the reason? You don't have to be worried. But the fact is very simple. We should have changed the base year, right, to somewhere around 2009 and 10. But there was a recession. There was a lot of disruption that was caused because of USA in the global market. Even India was affected. Now tell me, should you take a year which is right basically during this kind of a crisis as a base year? Does it make sense? Just like 20 and 21, we were experiencing certain impact on Indian economy because of 2008 crisis in USA. Should we take that as a base year? No, it doesn't make sense. That is the precise reason. Instead of all of these years, Government of India decided we should take 2011 and 2012 as a base year. Now the point is okay with all of you. Why did we choose 11 and 12? Why did we choose 11 and 12? Why not 2009 and 10? And if you go by the basic precedence, that is basic practice, we should have changed the base year again. Somewhere around 2017 and 18, or at least 2019 and 20, we should have changed the base year. But do you think pandemic allowed Government of India to change the base year? No, pandemic will not allow the Government of India to change the base year. And even before pandemic, right, I'm pretty sure all of you know from 2020 pandemic started having an impact. Is it okay? From 2020 pandemic started having an impact on Indian economy. But even before that also, remember this, even before that also, Indian economy was experiencing a slowdown. Is it okay? Any problem here? Even before pandemic, Indian economy was experiencing a slowdown. During pandemic, we experienced a recession. Now we are recovering. So all of you will agree? All of you will agree, right? After 2015, with the new base year of 2011 and 12, even though it was time for us to change the base year, because of pandemic, because of the slowdown, because of lot of disruption in the Indian economy, we have not had a chance for, right, a year with very low volatility. We have not had a chance where Indian economy will not experience these kind of events. That is the precise reason. Even today, we have not changed the base year. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? This is the history. This is a story behind this. Right? This is a story why even today the base year for us is 2011 and 12. Now, how do we use the base year? What is the use of the base year? I'll show you one calculation. Please do not by heart calculation. Understand the logic behind it. Okay? Understand the logic behind it. Right now, the base year for the calculation is what? 2011 and 12. And in this example, just to make the calculation easier, I'm assuming only one type of a final good, not one product, only one type of a final good is produced in India. Let's say in 2011 and 12, 10 goods, that is, I'll take this same bottle. Okay, let's say this bottle. Okay, so this bottle was the final good. How many goods were produced in 2011 and 12? 10. What was the market price of the bottle? 10 rupee. Remember the market price. Market price is important. Now cut to 2019 and 20. Come to the financial year 20. How many bottles have been manufactured? How many final goods? 15 goods. And what was the price between 11 and 12 to, sorry, between 11 and 12 to 19 and 20? What was the market price? Market price, because of inflation, has gone up to 12 rupee. Now calculate this GDP for the year 19 and 20. You will get the GDP at 180 rupees. Anybody has a difficulty in calculation? 12 rupee is the price per bottle. 15 bottles have been produced. So 15 into 12, 180 rupees. So come to the next point. Whenever you take the market price in the same year, I'll repeat the statement. Whenever you take market prices in the prevailing year means that respective year, and calculate GDP, that GDP is called as nominal GDP. I'll repeat it again. Whenever you take market price of a product in that respective year, that is the prevailing prices in that year, and calculate a GDP, you will call this GDP as a nominal GDP. Right? That is nominal GDP. Or else there is one more name for this, GDP at current market prices. GDP at current market prices. Now come to the next year, financial year 20 and 21. Financial year 20 and 21. 15 rupee is the price per bottle. Again, it has increased because of inflation. Right? Again, it has increased because of inflation. 15 rupees. And how many bottles did I manufacture in the financial year 21? I manufactured 20 bottles. So what is the nominal GDP for the financial year 21? It will be 20 bottles into 15 rupees, 300 rupees. Anybody has a problem with this? Just to make you understand, I'll call this as column 1. I'll call this as column 2. In the column number 3, it is basically column number 1 into column number 2. All of you okay with this? Column number 1 into column number 2. Right? So 180 rupees is the nominal GDP in the financial year 20, and 300 rupees is the nominal GDP in the financial year 21. But is it fair? I repeat, is it fair to directly compare between these two GDP numbers when the prices of the commodities have changed because of inflation? Is it fair? Is it fair to directly make a comparison and say GDP has increased by this much? No, it will be unfair. It's not correct also. So what we will do? Reference. Take a base year as a reference. What is the base year? 2011 and 12. And what was the price of the bottle in 2011 and 12? 10 rupee. All of you remember? Right? The price of this bottle in 2011 and 12 is 10 rupee. That will be the base year price. Now, how many quantities we have produced in these 2 years? 15 and 20. I'll write it as 15 and 20. Same thing. This is not going to change. 15, this will be 15. 20, this will be 20. That is goods. Same as column number 2. Nothing is changing. Second column, I'll write it. But in this column, instead of taking 12 rupee and 15 rupee, which is nothing but different prices because of inflation, I will take what was the price of the bottle in the base year. In the base year, what was the price? 10 rupee. I will write 10 rupee here and 10 rupee here. All of you are okay with this? Anybody has a problem? Why are we writing 10 rupee for both of these rows here? I am making it as 10 rupee because, I repeat, from 11 and 12 to 19 and 20 and to 2021, there is inflation. I'll repeat it. From 11 and 12 to 19 and 20 and 20 and 21, there is inflation in the market. So I want to remove the impact of inflation in the GDP number so that I can make a comparison. So 10 rupee into 15 bottles, GDP at base year price or GDP at constant prices will be 150 rupees. And 10 rupee into 20 rupee, GDP at base year prices will be 200 rupees. Now think of it. Can you make a comparison between these two GDPs and tell me what is the GDP growth rate? Let me know. Now, don't you think, right? Point number one, please look into it. And again, don't worry about calculation. UPSC will not ask you calculation. Trust me on this. UPSC will not ask you to write all of this table and calculate, etc. It's not required. But don't you think if you take a base year price and calculate GDP for 2 years, you have simply removed impact of inflation in both of these GDP numbers? All of you will agree with me? You have basically removed impact of inflation on both of these GDP numbers. Now you can simply make a comparison and say, and basically you can calculate, it will come somewhere around 33%. You can simply say GDP in these 2 years has grown by 33%. Any problem here? This is how base year is actually chosen, used, right, etc. Can we go forward? Now, there is one more concept. There is one more concept, base effect. There is one more term called as base effect. Do not confuse between base year and base effect. Understand my terms very carefully now. Do not confuse between base year and base effect. Base year is a reference point for you. But tell me this very carefully. I'm just trying to tell you certain important concepts here. Listen to me carefully. You'll come across in the newspaper. GDP growth rate, let's say for the third quarter is, I'll just throw arbitrary number, let's say 6%. What does it mean? You'll come across this data in the newspaper. They'll say GDP growth rate for the third quarter is 6%. What is this 6%? What are they comparing against, etc.? Logic is simple. Listen to me very carefully now. If this is financial year 24, right now we are in the financial year 24. So what they will do is, what was the GDP? What was the GDP value for the third quarter in the financial year 23? And what is the GDP value for the third quarter for financial year 24? they will make a comparison of these numbers, and after that, let's say they will tell you it is 6%. Please understand this very carefully, right? Many of you will get confused when you read all of this in the newspaper. What if they say GDP for third quarter is 6%, right? What if they use this statement? I'll repeat it. Listen to me very carefully. Current financial year is financial year 24. All of you will agree? Anybody in the classroom who says, no, sir, this is not financial year 24, it is financial year 23, 24. So when they say third quarter GDP growth rate is 6%, what do they mean? They simply mean for the same quarter last financial year, whatever was the GDP value, for this quarter, that is third quarter in this financial year, it has increased by 6%. Of course, after adjusting these prices with base year prices. Any problem with this idea? Let me know, any problem with this? Now, many of you ask me, why? Why do they make this kind of a comparison? Why do they need to compare with same quarter in the previous financial year? My dear, please think of it very carefully. Don't you think GDP will behave differently? That behave in the sense numbers. GDP will behave differently in the first quarter as well as third quarter? Yes or no? Apply common sense, you'll understand. Right? In case of Indian economy, where do you think there will be very, very high demand for goods and services? In the month of April, May, June, or October, November, December? Let me know. Where do you think there is a very high demand for goods and services, right, in Indian economy? In the first quarter, second quarter, or third quarter? Demand will be very, very high in the third quarter. Many of you are saying first quarter. No, it will be very high in the third quarter. Why? All of you know this. The number of festivals that we will have in the third quarter is very high. Correct? Number of festivals in the third quarter is very, very high. Right? If you don't trust me, go to a calendar, check it. Right? After a couple of days, you will experience Dasara. After that, you will basically get, right, let's say one more Diwali. After that, you will get, let's say December 25th, that is Christmas. After that, New Year, etc., etc. So there are so many. Again, even if I've not taken any of your festivals, don't get offended. Argument is simple. In the third quarter, festivals are a lot. And don't you think because of these festivals, demand for vehicles will be very high? Demand for, right, let's say agriculture commodities will be very high. Demand for luxurious products will be very high. Demand for two-wheelers will be very, very high. So that is the precise reason. Now, with this background, you tell me, does it make sense to make a comparison between second quarter and third quarter of the same year, or third quarter of the current year with the third quarter of the previous financial year? Let me know. Right? Don't you think it makes more sense to compare same quarters of two consecutive years rather than two consecutive quarters? Is it okay? Right? That is the precise reason whenever you come across this data, and this is not just applicable to GDP, it is applicable even to inflation. Remember this. It is applicable even to inflation. Sir, what do you mean by that? Right, after a couple of days, today is what? Today is 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. On 13th, you'll come across inflation data for the month of September. Understand this, right? On 13th of October, you'll get a data of inflation for the month of September. But please remember this. Whatever is the September 2023 inflation rate, it simply means, I'll just throw an arbitrary number. Let's say you'll come across newspaper article which says for September 2023, inflation rate is 6%. What does it mean? What does it mean? It simply means for September 2022, that is last financial year, for September 2022, whatever was the price levels of basket of commodities, In this year, it has increased by 6%. Is the logic okay? In this year, it has increased by 6%. That is the meaning of month calculation for inflation. And always remember GDP, quarter-wise GDP, same quarter in the previous financial year. Inflation, same month in the previous financial year. All of you okay with this? Any problem? All of you okay with this? This is basically how inflation data for month-wise is given, and GDP data for quarter-wise is also published. Right? Even if you have not understood these numbers, etc., simply remember 2 points. Simply remember 2 points. That is, in case of inflation, whatever is the month's inflation rate, whatever month, if they say January 2023, if they say inflation rate for January 2023 is this much, it is compared to January 2022. All of you okay with this point? Inflation, same month in the previous financial year. If they say GDP growth rate for first quarter is this much, what is the meaning of it? They are comparing whatever was the GDP value for the same quarter in the previous financial year. Because the reason is simple, from one quarter to the next quarter, economic situations will not remain same. But quarter, right, third quarter this year, third quarter next year, festivals will keep on happening every year, right? First quarter of this year, first quarter of next year, economic situations will almost be the same until unless there is no impact. That is the reason comparison is done always with the same month, same quarter of previous financial year. But let me know, please think of it. If you are making a comparison, listen to this very carefully, slightly technical, but once you understand all of this is very easy. Listen to me carefully. Imagine you are calculating GDP growth for the third quarter of financial year 22. Come to the point now. Imagine you're calculating GDP growth rate for the third quarter of financial year 22, which means you are comparing GDP of this quarter with the third quarter's GDP of the financial year 21. All of you okay with this point? Third quarter of previous financial year. But you tell me, what do you think was the situation in the third quarter of the financial year 21? Was the GDP very high or very low? Again, just to be very precise, let's say second quarter, because we experienced a contraction in the second quarter. What do you think would have happened in the second quarter of financial year 21? Do you think GDP increased? No, GDP contracted. GDP fell down. Right now, right? Imagine there was a contraction. There was a contraction of GDP in the second quarter of financial year 21. Now, second quarter of financial year 22, there was to a certain extent recovery in the economy. All of you agree? I'm talking about second quarter of financial year 22. Please remember that. So there was a recovery in the Indian economy, which means GDP was actually increasing, not contracting. It was increasing. Now, if you calculate the GDP growth rate for the second quarter of financial year 22, compare that with the second quarter of the previous financial year, don't you think because of this contraction, automatically you will feel GDP growth rate for the second quarter of financial year 22 will be very, very high? I know I'm throwing a lot of concepts at you, but please understand, I'll repeat it again. Okay. Second quarter of financial year 22, you are experiencing recovery. GDP is increasing. Just to prove that point, let's say GDP became, let's say 120 crore rupees. But second quarter of financial year 21, there was a contraction, which means GDP could have been somewhere around, let's say 80 crore rupees. Because of contraction, GDP is very low. Now, when you compare 80 crore with 120 crore, don't you think because of this contraction, the growth rate for this second quarter for financial year 22 will be very, very large? All of you okay with this? Any problem here? it appears GDP has grown with a very high percentage. In this example, GDP has grown by 50%. GDP has grown by 50%, right? But don't you think this 50% growth rate is because of this base of 80 crore rupees? All of you are able to understand? This 50% growth rate is because of base of 80 crore rupees. Hence, this is called as base effect. Hence, this is called as a base effect. I'll give you one more example. If this is very difficult for you to understand, I'll give you one more example. Let's say this year, I'll give you one more example. Please listen to me carefully. This year, tomato prices hit 200 rupees, 250 rupees in the month of, let's say, August. Okay, in the month of August, tomato prices hit 250 rupees. Now, because of tomato, because of onion, etc., don't you think the basket prices would be very, very high this year? Let me know. Because of tomato, because of onion, etc., because of that, don't you think the basket, for the basket, the prices would be very, very high? Now, next year, let's say, next year, August 2024, August 2024, normal tomato production, normal onion production, etc. Which means, what will be the cost for the basket? The prices for the basket will be normal prices. Yes, all of you are okay with this? Prices will not be very high. Prices will be normal as usual. But because you are comparing August 24 with August 23, don't you think because of this, you will feel there is a deflation because of this comparison? At least now all of you okay with this? Because this in August 2023, because the tomato price are very high, because the onion price are very high, supply is lesser, etc., etc., prices have become very, very high. And next year, production is normal. No change, normal. As per the demand, as it used to happen every year, normal production is there. So what will happen to prices? Prices will also be normal, not very high. So the basket price will also not be very high. It will be lower compared to the previous August 23. Now, if you make a comparison, you will feel there is a deflation. Prices have not increased but rather have fallen. But don't you think this deflation is because of unusual base here? All of you okay with this? This deflation is because of unusual. This is not a normal base. It is an unusual base. This is called as a base effect. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? This is a concept of base effect. Please remember this. Right? Why base effect is important? Because we are comparing quarter wise. Same quarter in the last year, if they have experienced a recession, and if it is a normal GDP this year, normal growth this year, you will feel GDP has increased by a large percentage. But GDP has not experienced by large number. It is because the base is uneven. Base has fallen down. You compare, you feel it is very large. That's a concept. Okay. Done? Right. All of this is basically called as a base effect. Do not get confused. Base effect is different. And base year is different. Base year is taken as a common reference point. Whenever you want to calculate GDP, etc., base year is a common reference point. But base effect means when you want to calculate GDP for this quarter, what is the impact of GDP number of the same quarter in the last year? That is called as a base effect. Do not worry about calculation. Don't worry about calculations at all in the GS paper 3. Now, the last concept under this, idea of GDP deflator. Idea of GDP deflator. Now, what is GDP deflator? GDP deflator basically is the ratio. It is a formula. It's a ratio of comparison between nominal GDP and real GDP. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is GDP deflator? It is a comparison. It's a ratio. It's a comparison of nominal GDP by real GDP. That is, if you take a table earlier, I'll write the numbers. Please remember, I'm taking the numbers from this particular table. I'll take numbers from this table. That is for financial year 21. Right? I'll use a different color so that you understand. Can you see the red marker now? Please do let me know. Can you see the red marker? Otherwise, let me highlight it. Let me highlight using a different color. Okay. So I'm basically taking this data. Can you see a different highlighted row now? What is the nominal GDP? 300 rupees. And what is the real GDP? 200 rupees. So I will take both of them. Right? Nominal of 300, real of 200. And I will write it in the formula. I'll write it in this particular formula. Now, what is the use of it? Let me explain it. What is the nominal GDP? Nominal GDP is 300 rupees. And what is the real GDP? Real GDP for the same financial year is 200, which means, can I say it is 1.5 or 150%? Anybody has a problem? Can I say it is nothing but 1.5 or 150%? But what is the importance of it? What is the meaning of this? Listen to me very carefully. Real GDP is calculated using base year prices. It is calculated using base year prices. And nominal GDP is calculated using current market prices. And when I make a comparison of GDP using two different prices, can I simply say it means the overall market prices, I repeat, the overall market prices in this year has increased by 50% because of inflation. I'll repeat the statement. Right? Everything is there right in front of you. Please look at it. I'll repeat the statement. Listen to me very carefully. I said real GDP is calculated using base year prices. Nominal GDP is calculated using current market prices. And when I use these two different prices, I get a GDP 300 rupees and 200 rupees, which is nothing but 1.5 or 150%. But what is the meaning of it? Can I say because of inflation, I repeat, because of inflation, the market prices of all the goods and services have increased by 50% in this financial year. Please answer whether this is okay with all of you or not. Because of inflation in this financial year, the market prices in the economy have increased by 50%. Anybody has a problem here? Anybody has a problem? Not clear. Okay. My dear, nominal GDP means what? Nominal GDP is calculated using what prices? It is calculated using current market prices. And if you remember the table, right, which again, most of you would not remember it, that's the reason you'll get a doubt. What is the current market price in the table here? What is the current market price? 10 rupee. And what was the base year price? I'm sorry, 15 rupees is the current market price. What is the base year price? 10 rupee. So if you apply the same logic, when you calculate nominal GDP, you're using current market price. And when you calculate a real GDP, you're using the base year prices. Base year prices. Now you tell me, from base year to the current year market price, don't you think the change is because of inflation? Until now, all of you okay with this? From from basically the base year prices to the current market prices, that is from 10 rupees to 15 rupees. What is this? Can I call this as inflation? This is basically because of inflation. Now, this is point number one. Point number two, what is nominal GDP? What is your nominal GDP for as per the calculation? 300 rupees. What is the real GDP? 200 rupees. Which means, can I say GDP deflator? GDP deflator is nothing but 1.5. 1.5, or can I write it as a 150%? Anybody has a difficulty in converting from number to percentages? 1.5 to 150% or 150%, which means, can I say from base year, if I use the base year prices and calculate GDP, and current market prices calculate GDP, which represents inflation, because of inflation, the GDP has increased by 50%. At least now it is okay with all of you. The GDP in the current year is 50% higher because of inflation. Because of inflation. What if there was no inflation? Think of it. What if there was no inflation? That is, let's say the base year price was 10 and current market price was also 10. So how many units? How many units of output? 20. So GDP at current market prices would be 200. GDP at constant market prices would also be 200. So 200 divided by 200, this will become 1, which means based on this, I'm talking about this by the way. Based on this, can I say, because I'm taking two different market prices, that is of base year, current market prices, and I'm calculating GDP, there is no change in the GDP, means what? There is no inflation. All of you okay with this? There is no inflation, right? So at least now it is clear. If it is 1.5 or 150% means because of inflation, the GDP has increased by 50%. Because of inflation, not because of output, because of inflation. What if I say the GDP deflator is 1.8? What if I say GDP deflate is 1.8? Can I say inflation accounts for 80% of current GDP? That is a rise in the GDP. Up to 80% of it is because of inflation. That is the meaning. Now, next important point. Next important point. Can I say between CPI, WPI, between CPI, WPI, and GDP deflator, GDP deflator is a much better comprehensive measure of inflation. I'll repeat the statement. Between CPI, WPI, and GDP deflator is a much better comprehensive measure of inflation. Why? In case of CPI and WPI, we consider few goods and services. You are following a basket of goods and services approach. Here you will consider only 299. Here you will consider 697. But when you calculate GDP deflator, is it okay if I say you are considering all the final goods and services that you have produced in a financial year? Is it okay? When you talk about GDP deflator, you are considering all the final goods and services which are produced in a year, right? Don't you think that means it is a much better comprehensive measure of inflation? GDP deflator is referred to as a implicit price deflator. It is used to adjust for inflation in a particular financial year. The ratio gives information about what extent the GDP has increased because of inflation rate in the economy. Right? Coverage of goods and services is much more comprehensive, which means all the final goods and services which are produced will be accounted for when you calculate GDP deflator. Now, next question is, many of you will basically say in that case, why are we not using GDP deflator? Why always we talk about CPI and WPI? Why not GDP deflator? Why target only CPI and WPI? Simple reason is this. Do we calculate GDP deflator monthly or quarterly? You please do let me know. Right? Do you think you'll calculate GDP deflator monthly or quarterly? Nothing difficult here. If you remember the concept, it becomes easy. You will get GDP deflator quarterly. You do not get it monthly, you will get it quarterly. Why? Many of you are saying, sir, we can calculate GDP deflator monthly. My dear, you cannot calculate GDP deflator monthly. Reason is that you get GDP quarterly. Very simple. You get GDP quarterly. right? We do not have monthly GDP calculation. We calculate GDP for every quarter, half a financial year, and full financial year. So when you cannot calculate GDP monthly, how can you calculate GDP deflator monthly? That is the reason GDP deflator is also calculated quarter wise. It is also calculated quarter wise. Whereas on the other side, CPI and WPI, can I say is calculated every month? Is it okay? CPI and WPI is calculated every month because we can get the data monthly like this. We can make the policies much more frequently compared to, let's say, GDP deflator. So that is basically the reason why, despite being a much better comprehensive measure of inflation, for policy making, generally we use a CPI in India. Okay, done. So these are certain very important concepts I wanted to discuss with you people regarding inflation. This is the end of discussion on inflation. Any questions that you people have, please do let me know. Any questions you people have, do let me know. Otherwise, we can take up the questions and solve questions, and right, we can go to the next chapter. Does inflation rate change situationally? Of course, yes. There are so many factors that will have an impact on inflation. What is inflation tax? I'll repeat it again. Imagine you have 100 rupee cash in your pocket. I repeat, imagine you have 100 rupee cash in your pocket. You will keep this 100 rupee cash. After 1 year, you will go and you want to purchase something in the market. Now please tell me, if price of, I'll take a simple number so that you understand it, right? Extreme example so that you understand it. Let's say you want to purchase using 100 rupee chocolates. Okay, you want to use this 100 rupee and purchase chocolates. And let's say right now, for a chocolate, the price is 20 rupee. After 1 year, the price will become 25 rupee, which means using the same 100 rupee cash, after 1 year, you'll not be able to purchase 5 units of the chocolate. You'll be able to purchase only 4 units of the chocolate, which means that 100 rupee has lost a certain purchasing value. The number is not changing, 100 rupee value will not change, but how much chocolates you can purchase, that will come down. If you want to purchase the same 5 units, now you cannot purchase it 100 at 100, you'll have to shell out 125 rupees. So don't you think the cash which you are holding with you, the value, right, that is 100 rupee will not change, but how many goods you can purchase, that number will start coming down. The cash will start losing its purchasing power. That is called as inflation tax. Okay. Sir, how 50% is rise? It is coming 150. My dear, with base year price, your number is 200. With current market price, which is nothing but inflation, it is coming 300. So has GDP increased by, do you understand these terminologies? Has a GDP increased by 50% or not? Simple question, by the way. From 200, right, if it becomes 300, has GDP not increased by 50%? That is because of inflation. Okay. Sir, if a financial year is starting in April, then why do quarter one, quarter two, etc., start in January? Who said quarter one, quarter two will start in January? Who said that? Did I say that? No, I have not said that. January, February, March will be fourth quarter. In India, January, February, and March will be fourth quarter. In fact, I've written all of this when I discussed GDP. Please go and see it. Right, first quarter will be starting from April, right? So and so forth. Okay, done. Let's go forward. Okay. Uh, was tomato an example of skewflation? Not necessarily, because please understand, there are so many factors that need to be considered whenever you talk about skewflation. You generally don't take only one product. look at multiple products. You look at multiple products, then you come to a conclusion, okay, this is a skewed inflation in the economy. Okay. Sir, why 2015 are not based after 2012? My dear, in 2015 we announced, I hope you understand, from 2015 we introduced a new methodology where the base year is 2011 and 12. Where the base year is 2011 and 12. That is the basic idea. Okay. Okay, let's start. Let's start solving the questions. Let's start solving the question. Please look at the questions. There are certain terms that you will feel these are right very difficult, etc. Don't worry, I'll tell you. Right? There are certain terms in this. Okay, 50% have answered correctly. Let me explain. With reference to Indian economy, demand pull inflation can be caused increased by which of the following? Point number one. Demand pull inflation simply means the overall aggregate demand in the economy should increase. All of you are clear with this? The total demand in the economy should increase. That will cause a demand pull inflation. Now, first one, expansionary policies. Please tell me, expansionary policies either of RBI or of Government of India, will they increase money supply in the economy or not? Please do let me know. Participate. Right? Don't ask me, sir, what is expansionary? You're not told. We have discussed the term expansionary earlier also in the context of counter-cyclical and pro-cyclical policies. Expansionary means money supply should increase. So when money supply increases, automatically the demand for the goods and services will increase. Right? First one is correct. I can use elimination, but I'll not use elimination because this kind of a elimination methodology is becoming useless with the new kind of options now. Second one is fiscal stimulus. Many of you ask me, sir, what do you mean by fiscal stimulus? Fiscal stimulus refers to the policy of Government of India where they will provide assistance, financial assistance to specific sectors or areas. I will repeat the statement. Right? What is a fiscal stimulus? It refers to money assistance given by the government to specific sectors or areas where there is a need for revival, where there is a need for recovery or revival. Sir, any example? I'll give you one example in current affairs. One example in the current affairs. Government of India in the last couple of years, can I say, has announced a lot of assistance for civil aviation sector. Let me know. Has announced a lot of assistance for civil aviation sector. It has announced a lot of assistance to the telecom sector, etc. Why? Please understand. Some of you are writing, sir, it is subsidy. No, my dear, subsidy is given anyways. Not just for recovery or revival. Subsidy is given anyways by the government. But very recently, because of the pandemic, can I say, civil aviation market took a hit. Right? Civil aviation market was affected because of it. So Government of India announced a package where certain assistance will be given to many companies which are working in the civil aviation market, telecom sector, textile sector, MSME sector, etc. These are collectively referred to as a policy of fiscal stimulus. Is it okay? Can we go forward? Right? It's a fiscal stimulus policy. Okay. Now, let me know fiscal stimulus, if government will provide assistance like this, will the money supply increase or not? Very simple. Will the money supply increase in the economy? Yes. If the money supply increases, can that cause a demand in the economy? Answer is yes. But sir, it is a supply side factor. My dear, fiscal stimulus can be given to agriculture sector, can be given to agriculture sector also, can be given to consumers also, right? So I hope you understand. Because I've given an example of civil aviation, do not restrict it to only civil aviation. It's a very wide term, right? It's a very wide, it's a very generic term. I took one example of civil aviation, right? So fiscal stimulus will increase money supply, and higher money supply will always increase the demand. So second one is also correct. Third one, inflation indexation of wages. Interesting. Inflation indexation of the wages. What do you mean by inflation indexation of the wages? Let's assume, understand this very carefully. You are earning 100 rupee wage and the price of the bottle is 100 rupee. Is it okay? You are earning 100 rupee wages, price of the bottle is 100. Price of the bottle will increase by 10%. Your wages will also be increased by 10%. Any problem in understanding this? Price of the bottle will increase by 10%. Your wages will also increase by 10%, which means price of the bottle is 110. Your wages will become 110. Now, please tell me, because of this, will the demand increase in the market? Let me know. Will the demand increase in the market? Right? It will not increase. Some of you are saying yes. How? How it will increase? You please tell me. Please tell me how it will increase. That is, let's say for a basket of goods and services, price was 100, your wages was 100. The price will increase by 10% to 110, your wages will increase by 10% to 110. Will you not still be able to purchase same set of goods and services? Yes or no? Will you not be able to purchase same set of goods and services? Demand will not change, right? So inflation indexation of the wages will not cause inflation. Okay. Next one, higher purchasing power. Higher purchasing power. Straightforward. If your money has higher purchasing power, will you not purchase more and more goods and services in the economy? Of course, yes. So it will increase the demand, can cause demand pull inflation. And finally, rising interest rates. Yesterday we have discussed this. You tell me, if the interest rates will start increasing, right, don't you think demand in the economy will start coming down? Correct? If the interest rates in the economy will start increasing, right, the demand will start decreasing, not increasing, right? So fifth one is wrong. So 1, 2 and 4, right, are correct. Right option will be option A. I could have used elimination method. I have not used it, right? Why? Suddenly UPSC instead of this might throw in, right, different type of options. Only 2 of them are correct, only 3 of them are correct, only 4 of them are correct, right? All the 5 of them are correct. In that case, you cannot use elimination. That's the reason I have not used elimination. Okay, done. Next one. Okay, 67% have answered correctly. Let's solve it. With reference to inflation in India, which of the following statements is correct? Controlling the inflation in India is the responsibility of government of India only. Wrong. Reserve Bank of India has no role in controlling the inflation. Wrong. Decreased money circulation will help in controlling inflation. Correct. Increased money circulation will help in controlling inflation. Wrong. If you increase the money circulation, right, it will cause inflation, not help in controlling inflation. Right option is option C here. Okay. Next one. Okay, 52% have answered correctly. Which of the following brings out consumer price index number for industrial workers? CPI-IW. CPI-IW is published by Labor Ministry under the Labor Ministry. Right? I've written the term Ministry of Labor. Under the Ministry of Labor, there's a department by the name of Labor Bureau. So it is the Labor Bureau which will publish a CPI-IW as well as a CPI Agriculture Labor. Both of them is published by Labor Ministry only. Okay. Now let me explain this. Right? Not now. We'll take a break. We'll start from this particular point. I need to explain certain concepts in this, right? Because some of the students will find these terminologies very difficult. Right? For some, it is a repetition. For some, it is very easy. For a large number of them, how do you understand what is a debtor, what is a bond, etc.? You need a certain concept to solve this. Let's take a break. We'll start from this particular question after the break. Okay, let's take a break. And by the way, I'll start the session at 7 2. I'll start the session at 7 2 p.m. Please join back at 7 2 p.m. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Please do let me know that I'm audible so that we can start the discussion. Anybody audible? Let's start. So let's start. Consider the following statements. Inflation benefits debtors. Inflation benefits bondholders. Please understand this question very carefully. Lot of you will argue with me. Lot of you will try to me prove. Lot of you will try to prove me wrong, etc., etc. But listen carefully, then make up the right conclusion. Point number one: benefit doesn't mean profit. Benefit doesn't mean profit in this situation. What do you mean by this? Let me know. All of you have got vaccination done. First round of vaccination, second round of vaccination, booster dose, etc., etc. Will you get profit by getting COVID vaccination, or will you get benefit by taking COVID vaccination? Simple question. Will you get profit or will you get benefit? All of you will agree with me. You will get the benefit of COVID vaccination. So I hope you understand the question here. The statement here simply is which of the two, that is the debtors and bondholders, will get the benefit. So do not start talking about profit is earned by him, profit is earned by them, etc., etc. It is benefit. Benefit means, right, anything that is happening, you are getting something out of it. Not money, something out of it. Benefit. That's the first point. Second point, what is a debtor? What is a bondholder? Listen carefully. Here is a bank. Bank will provide loan to a customer. Loan to a customer. So a customer who will take a loan will simply call this as a debtor. Debtor means the person who will pay back. The person who has to return the amount back. On the other side, bank has given a loan. I will call the bank as a creditor. I will refer to the bank as a creditor. So now all of you okay? What is a creditor? What is the debtor? What is the meaning of it? Point number two. Point number three, there is a term called as bond here. Right? In the question, there's a term called as a bond. Right? They have used the term bondholder. Let me explain to you what do you mean by a bond. Bond is nothing but it's a debt instrument. It is a debt instrument. It is the instrument of borrowing. It is an instrument for borrowing. Instrument for borrowing. What do you mean by this? Let's start. Here is an example of a bond. Please do let me know. Can everybody see what is the paper reading which is there in my hand? Let me know. What is there in the paper? Can everybody read it? Anybody in the classroom who says, right, what is there? I can't see it, etc. Right? If you are not able to see, what is given in the paper is simple. This is a piece of paper where I've written 100 rupee. I've written 3 years and I've written 6%. If you can't see it, don't worry. I'm writing it in the slide also. Right? Have a look at it. At least now it is clear. 100 rupee, 3 years and 6%. This is basically a bond. This is basically a bond. A bond can be issued. I'll write it in the next slide. A bond can be issued. Bond can be issued by government. Bond can be issued even by the corporate sector. Very simple. Bond can be issued even by the government as well as corporate sector. Please remember these basic points. In the next, let's say next chapter, I believe not next, after that, when I take up banking, I'll not discuss bond. When I take a financial market, I'll not discuss bond. I'm discussing bond right now. Listen to me carefully. Government can issue a bond. Corporate sector can issue a bond. For what purpose? For borrowing purposes. For borrowing purposes. For example, I'll take the same piece of paper. I'll take this particular piece of paper. I will issue it to you. I will issue this particular piece of paper to you for how many years? What is written on the piece of paper? 3 years is written. All of you okay? I will issue this piece of paper for 3 years to you and I'll take 100 rupees from you. Understand this carefully. I will issue this piece of paper to you. I'll take this 100 rupee from you for how many years? 3 years. And for every year, because I've taken 100 rupee from you, every year I will give you how much rate of interest? I will give you 6% of the 100 rupee. Whatever is written on the bond, 6% of that I will give you in the form of rate of interest. This 6% in case of bond is called as coupon rate. It is referred to as a coupon rate. All of you okay with this? I'll repeat it again. This is nothing but an example of a bond. And many of you are asking, sir, is it always 3 years? Not necessarily. Bond will have a maturity period of more than 1 year. I'm repeating the statement. I've written 3 years here. Is it always 3 years? Not necessarily. I can issue the same bond for 5 years. Possible. I can issue the same bond for 10 years. I can issue this bond for 30 years. But what is important point here? Bonds will have a maturity period of more than 1 year. More than 1 year. Please remember this. Bonds generally will have a maturity period of more than 1 year. Right? So these are the important points. I'll repeat it again. Bonds are issued by government or corporate sector. Bonds are used for borrowing purposes. Government wants to borrow, companies want to borrow, etc. And third point is bonds will have a maturity period of more than 1 year. And whenever bonds are issued, bonds carry a coupon rate. Coupon rate. Coupon rate of how much? In this example, 6%. Now, there are certain students who are asking when the coupon rate will be given. Is it given monthly? It is given annually, etc. Please understand there is no uniformity here. There is no uniformity. For example, government will provide coupon once after 6 months. Right? In simple terms, in 1 year, government will provide a coupon rate 2 times in a year. 2 times in a year. Some of the companies will provide coupon rate right after 1 year. So there is no uniformity here. Government will provide after 6 months, right? Companies will provide after 1 year. That is basically the concept of a bond. But please tell me, can I say if I issue a bond, let me know. If I issue a bond to you and if I take 100 rupees from you, can I say I am a borrower? Simple question, right? Can I say I am a borrower? That is nothing but, can I call myself as a debtor here? Let me know. If I issued a 100 rupees bond, I've collected 100 rupees from you for 3 years, can I call myself as a debtor? And now, can I call you as a bondholder? All of you okay with this classification? You will become a creditor, that is nothing but a bondholder. I am a borrower, nothing but a debtor. So even when they say a bondholder, can I simply call this as nothing but a creditor? Any problem with these two terms? Right? So bondholder is nothing but a creditor. So now the question is, will the inflation benefit creditor or will the inflation benefit borrower? Always remember this, inflation benefits borrowers. I repeat, inflation, please remember this, I'll explain it. Inflation will benefit borrowers. How? Let me start with a very simple example. Imagine there is a basket of goods and services and the price of the basket, I repeat, price of the basket is 100 rupee. Price of the basket is 100 rupee. Now you have the 100 rupee. Instead of, I repeat, instead of purchasing this basket of goods and services, you will give this 100 rupee to me. You will lend this 100 rupees to me. In this example, right, you are a creditor, I am a borrower. All of you will agree? You are a creditor, I am a borrower. Now let's say after 1 year, after 2 years, or whatever numbers of years, don't worry. You will get the amount back of, let's say, 100 rupee. But when you want to purchase the same set of goods and services, which costed you 100 rupees earlier, now will cost you, let's say, 120 rupees. Earlier, the basket of goods and services would cost you 100, now will cost you 120. Listen to my statement carefully now. Please listen to my statement carefully. Can I say, in this example, I repeat, in this example, I took 100 rupees from you when its purchasing power was higher, returned the money to you when its purchasing power was lower. I'll repeat the statement. I'll repeat the statement. Listen to me carefully first. Right? I will take 100 rupees from you when the 100 rupees purchasing power is higher. I will return the money to you when the purchasing power is lower. Please talk about purchasing power of money. That is the reason I started with the concept of profit and benefit. Many of you will start telling me now, as expected, what about interest rate? But the person will earn interest, etc. Question is, inflation will benefit whom? Understand the statement first. Question is, inflation will benefit whom? Question is not about interest rate. Question is about inflation. So when there is inflation in the economy, borrowers will take money when its purchasing power is high, and they will repay the money when its purchasing power is lower. So can I say inflation is benefiting borrowers, not the creditors here? All of you okay? Inflation will benefit borrowers, not the creditors here. Right? So that is the reason. Go back to the question here. Consider the following statements. Inflation benefits debtors. Inflation benefits bondholders. Inflation benefits the borrowers, that is the debtors. So right option will be option A here. Right option will be option A. Okay? Done? Next. I believe there is a descriptive question. Oh, one more. Solve this question. Solve the question. Okay, 63% have answered correctly. With reference to economy, the core inflation is considered to be a better indicator than headline inflation because core inflation excludes certain items that are subject to sudden and short-lived price movements. All of you will agree this statement is correct? Let me know. All of you will agree? Anybody in the classroom who says no, this is not correct? Statement A is correct. Core inflation has a wider basket of items. Wider basket of items in case of core inflation? No. Core inflation has a narrower basket, not wider. Wider means more. Okay. So B is wrong. Headline inflation is used as a nominal anchor. Many of you ask me, sir, what is this? Nominal anchor. Nominal anchor means for policy making. I repeat, policy making, which indicator is used? Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. Nominal anchor simply means for policy making, which indicator is used. Now, please tell me, in case of RBI, do we use core inflation or the headline inflation for policy making? Let me know. Right? Which one do we use? Is it core inflation or an headline inflation? Don't you think it is headline inflation? So headline inflation is used as a nominal anchor. Correct. Many of you will say statement is correct. Yes, statement is correct. But please tell me, is the statement answer to the question? Let me know. Is the statement C answer to the question? Statement is correct, but statement is not the answer to the question. So can I say C is wrong? Hence C, option C is wrong. Core inflation includes certain items that are subject to sudden and short-lived price movements. Exactly opposite, D is also wrong. Right option is option A. Core inflation is basically this. Again, I'll repeat, nominal anchor means which indicator we use for policy making. Is it okay? Which indicator we use for policy making? It is a headline CPI that is used for policy making. Okay, start. Okay, 83% have answered correctly, but it should have been more. I'll tell you one fact. I'm pretty sure many of you opted A without looking at other options. Correct? I'm pretty sure many of you would have gone for A without looking at other options. Oil price increase in the world. Will this cause cost push inflation? We have discussed this multiple times. Of course, yes, that will increase the cost push inflation. Fluctuations in the production of food grains. Can this cause structural inflation? Can this cause structural inflation? Of course, yes. Right, and this is also supply side. So can this cause cost push inflation? Yes. Imposition of high commodity taxes such as let's say GST. In fact, I took the example of this bottle. I said, what if government will impose a tax of 10 rupee? Then the government will increase the tax to 20 rupee. Will that not cause a higher market price, causing cost push inflation? Yes. So all the three are correct. Right option will be option D, all of the above. All of the above is the right option. Okay. Now finally, a descriptive question. Right? Basically, a descriptive question. Have a look at this. B option is due to shock. My dear, supply side. Supply side. It is basically supply side. Supply side factors will contribute to cost push inflation. Okay. Do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left the Indian economy in good shape? Give reasons in support of your argument. Okay, do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left the Indian economy in good shape? Give reasons in support of your argument. Very typical question of UPSC. Why? Please do let me know. Do you think any book will give you answer to this question? I'm asking a question now. Let me know. Do you think any book will discuss an answer related to this kind of question? Answer is no. Why? This question is completely related to current affairs concept. Current affairs. What is happening in the current affairs? That has been asked in UPSC like this. So again, this is an indicator. I repeat, this is an indicator for you. What's an indicator? What is the inference you need to draw? All the questions which are asked in UPSC will not be from books. Do not expect there will be one book. All the questions will be picked up from only this book. That would be a very, very big blunder for your UPSC preparation. Right? Argument is simple. Out of let's say 8 to 9 questions from Indian economy, hardly 1 or 2 will be picked up directly from the book. Rest of them will be from current affairs. Rest of them will be from current affairs. That is guaranteed. I'll give a very simple example. Those who have read today's Hindu newspaper or any other newspaper for that matter, was there an article which can be a potential question in social issues paper, which can be a potential question in inclusive growth in GS paper 3. Let me see. Right? Was there an article in Hindu newspaper today? I'll give a very basic title of that article. Nobel Prize for Economics. Nobel Prize for Economics. Right? I don't know how many of you have read that article. Wonderful information is there in that particular article. Please read that. Please read that article. Women empowerment or employment, unemployment, or let's say wage gaps. Rather than employment, unemployment, it is for wage gaps. Wage gaps between male and female population, which can be a potential question for social issues paper, which can be a potential question for inclusive growth under GS paper 3. So I hope you understand, right? The questions are very much going to be picked up from these particular areas only. And there is a particular reason why I'm emphasizing on that. There's a particular reason for it. Why? Why that is so important? She is only the third woman to win Nobel Prize in Economics. Have you read about it? Claudia Goldin. She is the third woman to get economics Nobel. And the best part is she is the first one to win it individually. I hope you understand my point here. She is the first one to win it individually. Individually means what? Whenever Nobel Prizes are announced like this, there will be two people, there will be three people, there will be four people who are sharing this Nobel Prize. Correct? They'll be sharing this Nobel Prize. Right? Two people, three people are sharing it. But she is the third woman to get economics Nobel or Nobel in economics. And more importantly, she is the individual winner, sole winner. That's a precise reason why this article is so important. So that's a reason. Please read newspapers. Don't expect UPSC to pick up questions from books. They can pick up right questions from current affairs as well. Now, some of you are saying video error is there, audio error is there, etc., etc. Please hit the refresh button. Please hit the refresh button. It is perfectly working from my side. Right? There is something amiss from your side. Hit the refresh button. Okay. Now come back to the question. Do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left the Indian economy in good shape? Give reasons in support of your argument. Right? Argument is very simple here. Three components to the answer: introduction, main body, and conclusion. What is introduction? Whenever any economy experiences a GDP growth rate, associated with GDP growth rate, there is expected inflation rate to appear or to be there in the Indian economy, or for that matter, any economy. Come to the second point. In the context of Indian economy, what has been the experience in the last couple of years? Before the inflation targeting concept was introduced, inflation rate on an average was more than 5% 5 years prior to 2016. But once the inflation targeting concept has been implemented, inflation has averaged somewhere around 3.5%, which means in the last 5 to 6 years, no doubt GDP growth rate is there. Along with that, inflation rate also has been moderate. All of you will agree with me? I'll repeat the statement. I'm taking the data which was there earlier in the PPT only. So before the 2016, the average rate of inflation was around 5.4%. After 2016 till 2021, the average rate of inflation is 3.4%, which means with GDP growth rate, we have experienced moderate rate of inflation. Now you please tell me, is moderate rate of inflation good for Indian economy or not? Moderate rate of inflation is good for economy, right? So yes, moderate rate of inflation along with the GDP growth rate, it has provided benefits to Indian economy. But having said so, even today there are certain concerns which are associated with Indian economy. For example, unemployment rate in many of the years or in many of the months or quarters, unemployment rate has been higher. Today's newspaper, please read that data. Don't by heart it, read the data. Unemployment rate has been on a higher side. In addition to that, there are certain sectors in the Indian economy, such as agriculture sector, where right the farmers have not been able to earn better returns. Agriculture sector is performing well, but the farmers are not getting steady amount of returns, and that's a fact, by the way. Third one, third one, in case of industries in India, one of the issues of concern has been skilled labor availability. Is it okay? Skilled labor availability has become a problem. Fourth one, although inflation on an average has been in control, on an average, overall inflation has been under control. Food inflation, that is the inflation in case of food grains, vegetables, pulses, oil, onion, tomato, etc. The food inflation has been on a higher side, which is a cause of concern for Indian economy. And WPI, which is also an indicator for inflation, WPI for many months has experienced a double digit inflation rate, which is a cause of concern because continuous double digit WPI rate simply means over a period of time, even CPI will start increasing. Right? So generally, this is how you write answers to the questions which are asked in UPSC. But again, please understand, many of you will feel this is very difficult. It's not difficult. You do not have practice. Simple argument, right? You will feel this is very difficult. Many of you will simply say, I don't know that so many problems were there in Indian economy. That is because you have started reading newspapers very recently. Once you start reading regularly, if you become a regular reader of the newspaper, you will get to know all of these particular points over a period of time. Done? Right? So this is the model answer asked to the question on inflation here. Can we go forward now? Next concept that I'll be discussing, the next idea that I'll be discussing will be the chapter of taxation. Okay? Right, the next concept or next chapter will be concept of or the chapter of taxation. Very important from the context of UPSC. Very important in the context of UPSC. Why? Questions have appeared on taxation in case of prelims and sometimes in case of mains also. Even in mains, questions have come. Right, so with that particular caveat, what are the points we are going to cover? Taxation basics, types of taxation systems, some of the taxes such as VAT, service tax, GST, MAT, GAR, etc. Problems with Indian taxation system, what kind of reforms we have implemented, concept of Laffer curve, and as usual, questions from the chapter of taxation. Now let me start. Point number one. What do you mean by fiscal policy? Earlier also we have discussed it. It's just a repetition. Fiscal policy refers to usage of taxation policy as well as expenditures so that government will achieve certain objective. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Fiscal policy means using taxation policy as well as expenditure policies to achieve certain objective by the government. For example, sir, many of you will ask me, what kind of objective are we looking at? Can I say industrialization, promotion of industries can be an objective here? Let me know. Can promotion of industrialization, can it be objective of a fiscal policy? Of course, yes. Can promotion of social welfare be an objective? Of course, yes. Right? Can reduction in poverty, eradication of poverty, can it be an objective of fiscal policy? Promotion of employment can be an objective of fiscal policy. So I hope you understand fiscal policy refers to a set of policy measures associated with taxation, associated with the expenditure, which will be used by the government to achieve certain objectives. That's a definition of fiscal policy. Now, what do you mean by the term tax? How do you define the term tax? Tax is a charge or a levy. It is a charge or a levy that is imposed by the government on individuals, on companies, etc. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is a tax? Tax is a charge or a levy that is imposed by the government. That is imposed by the government on individuals, on companies, on foreign investors, etc., etc. That is called as a tax. For example, you purchased a mobile phone. Will you not pay GST to the government? You will go to restaurant. Will you not pay GST to the government? You are earning incomes. Will you not pay income taxes to the government? So tax is nothing but a charge or a levy that is imposed by the government on individuals, on consumers, on companies, on investors, etc. Why? Why does government impose a tax? The reason is simple here. Government wants to earn revenue. All of you will agree with me? Government wants to earn revenue. Revenue is very important because government has to spend money. To spend money, government has to earn money. One of the very important sources of revenue, one of the very important sources of money for the government will be taxes itself. In fact, later I'll show you around 60% plus, around 60% plus of total income earned by the government will be in the form of taxes itself. So government wants to spend money so that, right, so that it will achieve objective. For that they want money that will be earned through taxation, right? Now there is one more term called as a tax base. Understand this very carefully. There's a term called as a tax base. Now, what is this tax base? Tax base refers to the object on which the tax will be imposed. I'll repeat the statement. The tax base simply means the object on which government will impose the tax and collect the taxes. For example, can I say goods on which taxes GST is imposed is a part of the tax base? Please do let me know. Pitch in, participate, only then it becomes easier for you. I'll repeat it. Goods on which government will impose a tax, can I say it is a part of the tax base? You will earn income. Government will impose and collect income taxes from you. Can I say you are part of the tax base? Right, sir? Why this particular term is important? Many of the times in the newspaper you will come, government wants to widen the tax base. Is that okay? Government will say, I want to widen, I want to increase the tax base. How it can be done? Let's say, for example, until now, certain foreign investors were not paying any taxes in India. I'll take a very simple example. Listen carefully. Let's say until now, certain foreign investors did not pay any taxes in India. Now, what if government of India will identify them, impose the tax and collect the taxes from them? Can I say tax base has widened? Let me know. Can I say tax base has widened? I'll give you one more example. Many of you will say, no, sir, give me one more example. Right now, if you are earning income from agriculture, agriculture is the source of the income for you. You do not have to pay income taxes to government of India. You don't have to pay any income taxes. But what if I say government tomorrow will say even from income, sorry, even from agriculture, if you earn income, pay 20% income tax. Can I say tax base is widening because of that? Right? So I hope you understand the logic behind it. Tax bases can be widened so that more and more taxes can be collected. Can be collected. That is basically the idea of a tax base. Very often in discussion in the classroom, in the newspaper, you'll come across the term tax base. Please do not be confused about it. Okay, done. Now, what are the different types of taxation system? What are the different types of taxation system? I'll discuss multiple types. Please listen carefully. Don't get confused. Listen carefully. First one, direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes and indirect taxes. Let me start with example. Example one, let's say you are there. You are earning income. Okay, you are earning certain income. You are a software engineer. You are right, let's say working for company XYZ, you are earning certain amount of income. Government will impose, government will impose income taxes on you and you will pay income taxes to government. Any problem with example one? I'll repeat it again. Very simple concept. You are earning income, government will impose income taxes on you, you will pay income taxes to government. That is example 1. Example 2. Let's say I am a seller. I'm having a shop. I'm selling this bottle. The cost of the bottle is 100 rupee. Government says GST of 10%, that is 10 rupee GST. Is it okay? 10 rupee GST. But government will impose a GST on me. Is it okay? I'll write it so that you understand. Here is the government. Government will impose GST of 10 rupee on the shopkeeper. On the shopkeeper, that is seller. But what the shopkeeper does? The shopkeeper, that is me, I will sell the bottle to you at 100 rupee plus 10 rupee GST. Now, can I simply say that 10 rupee GST, you will pay it to me and I will give it to government? Any problem with the second example? Any problem with the second example? Government has imposed GST on me. I will not pay it from my pocket. When I will sell the bottle to you, I will collect the 10 rupee GST from you and I'll give it to government. Now please understand, I'll start using technical terms. In example 1, the government will impose a tax on a taxpayer and the same taxpayer will bear the burden of tax. I'll repeat the statement. Look at example 1 and do let me know whether this is easy or very difficult for you. In example 1, government will impose a tax on the taxpayer and the same taxpayer will pay the taxes from their pocket, which means burden of taxation falls on the same person. Whereas in the second example, government will impose a tax on the shopkeeper who is transferring the burden of tax to the customer. Which means in one case, there is no transfer of tax burden. In another case, there is a transfer of burden of taxation. The first example is called as a direct tax. Second example is indirect tax. All of you okay with the difference between a direct and indirect tax? Please do let me know. The first example is an example of a direct tax. Second one is an example of indirect tax. In fact, please remember there are two technical terms. One is called as, just a second, one is called as incidence of taxation and the second one is called as impact of taxation. One is called as incidence of taxation, second one is called as impact of taxation. What's the basic idea? Incidence means the final burden, which is nothing but the resting place of tax. Resting place. Who will pay the taxes from their pocket? Is it okay? Who will pay the taxes from their pocket? And impact means it is the initial burden, which also means the first point of application of tax. First point of application of tax. Right? Now please have a look at it. Can I say in case of example 1, incidence and impact are on the same person? Example 1, I'm repeating. In example 1, incidence and impact are on the same person. Whereas in case of example 2, incidence and impact are on two different people. Incidence and impact are on two different people. Meaning what? Incidence means a final resting place. Impact means a first point of application. So have a look at in case of GST. In case of GST, can I say impact is on shopkeeper Incidence is on customer. I'll repeat it. In case of GST, that is example 2, impact is on the shopkeeper, incidence is on the customer. Right? So where is the first point of application of tax? It is on shopkeeper. Government will impose GST on the shopkeeper. Whereas finally the GST will be paid by whom? It will be paid by customer. So impact is on shopkeeper here, incidence is on the customer. Right? So whenever this will happen, this is called as indirect taxes. Whenever the tax burden can be shifted like this, it is the concept of indirect taxes. Okay? Right? So direct taxes, indirect taxes. Now next point. Can I say direct taxes direct taxes can differentiate between taxpayers, and indirect taxes cannot differentiate between the taxpayers. Listen carefully, I'll repeat the statement again. Direct taxes can differentiate between taxpayers, which is nothing but universal in application, whereas specific in application, whereas indirect taxes are universal in application. Meaning what? If you are earning 10 lakh rupees, you will pay more taxes compared to person earning 5,000 rupees. All of you will agree with me? If you are earning 10 lakh rupees, you will pay more taxes compared to person earning 5,000 rupees. And if there's a third person who is earning 1 crore rupees, the third person will pay more taxes compared to you. Which means direct taxes can target taxpayers. Right? If you're earning 5,000, I will not collect anything from you. If you're earning 10 lakh rupees, I'll collect more from you. If you're earning 5 crore rupees, I'll collect much more taxes from you. But on the other side, let's say GST on this bottle is 10 rupee. You purchase, you'll pay 10 rupee. I will purchase, I'll pay 10 rupee. If Mr. Mukesh Ambani purchases 10 rupee GST. So don't you think indirect taxes are universally applicable, cannot differentiate between taxpayers, whereas on the other side, direct taxes can differentiate between taxpayers. Is it okay? Right. So that is basically the idea of direct taxes as well as indirect taxes. Please remember it. Now, let me go to the next set. Progressive, regressive, and proportional. Progressive, regressive, and proportional. What is progressive taxes? The taxes which are paid or tax rate will keep on increasing with increase in the income. Simple. As the tax base will increase, the tax rate will also keep on increasing. Can I give you a best example? Income taxes in India. Income taxes in India. All of you will agree? For example, if you are earning up to 2 lakh, what is the tax rate, income tax rate for you? It will be 0%. Correct? It will be 0%. If you are earning more than 2 lakh, up to 5 lakh, it will be 5% for you. If you are earning more than 5 lakh, up to 10 lakh, it will be 20% income tax applicable for you. So what are you seeing here? Let me know. What are you seeing here? Basically, with change in the income, with a higher income, you will basically have to pay higher rate of taxation. Right? That is called as progressive rate of taxation system. Progressive. Second one is regressive. Exactly opposite. Second one is regressive. You will earn a higher income, but the tax rate applicable to you will be lesser. Is it okay? You will earn a higher income, tax rate applicable to you is lower. What is the example for this? Best example for this is, generally experts say indirect taxes are regressive in nature. Please remember this. Experts say that indirect taxes are regressive in nature. How so? Imagine there is a person who is earning 1 crore and there is one more person earning 1000 rupees. Both will purchase a bottle. This person will pay 10 rupee. This person will also pay a GST of 10 rupee. Please calculate in terms of percentages. You'll understand it. Can I say this person, I repeat, second person, I'll write it as B. Second person, that is B, is paying 1% of the income in the form of indirect taxes. Whereas a person A is paying a fraction, right? Just a decimal point of the total income in the form of indirect taxes. So don't you think in case of indirect taxes, more the income you generate, only a fraction of it you'll pay in the form of indirect taxes, right? Don't you think that is exactly opposite? Higher income, but only part of it, lesser part of it you'll pay in the form of indirect taxes. That is called as regressive taxation. Regressive taxation. Best example for regressive taxation system is, right, the indirect taxes. Indirect taxes. Third one is proportional. Third one is proportional. Whatever be your income, I repeat, whatever be your income, doesn't matter, the tax rate will remain same. I'll repeat it. Whatever be your income, doesn't matter, tax rate applicable will remain same. For example, in case of India, for some of the companies, for some of the companies, right, the corporate tax rate is 30%. For some of the companies, corporate tax rate is 30%, which means whatever be their profit, I repeat, whatever be the profit, 30% of the profit they will pay to government of India in the form of taxes, corporate taxes. Now, can I simply say whether you are earning 5,000 crore rupee or you are earning 10,000 crore rupee, doesn't matter, you will end up paying 30% of it to government of India. Is the logic okay with all of you? Whether you are earning 5,000 crore, 10,000 crore, 30,000 crore, 40,000 crore, doesn't matter. What is the tax rate applicable to you? 30% is the tax rate. Right? So one is a progressive, second one is a regressive, third one is called as proportional. In fact, at the optional level, right? At the optional level, lot of discussion actually happens here, because I'm pretty sure some of you look at it and say, sir, even proportional type of taxation looks regressive in nature. Not necessarily. There is a concept called as marginal rate of taxation and average rate of taxation. Those who are asking that question, listen to me carefully. There is a concept called as marginal rate of taxation and average rate of taxation. And when you talk about marginal rate, average rate, for all the three, the calculation will have to be made. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. I can do the calculation. We can take half an hour to understand what is the actual difference between regressive and proportional. But please do not worry. I repeat, there is a concept called as marginal rate and right average rate of taxation. In case of proportional taxes, marginal rate of taxation and average rate of taxation will always remain same. Remember this. In case of proportional, marginal and average will always remain same. Whereas when you talk about when you talk about progressive, regressive, there'll be change in marginal rate of taxation and average rate of taxation. I do not want you to enter into all of it. But please remember, this is a basic idea. Proportional, same rate. Progressive, increasing rate. Regressive, decreasing rate. Please remember that, more than sufficient. And example for proportional rate of taxation is corporate rate of taxation. Let's say 30%. All the companies which are under 30% will pay 30% of their income in the form of taxes. Okay, done. This is one more set of classification. Let me go to third set of classification. One is ad valorem. Second one is specific. One is ad valorem. Second one is specific. Now, what is ad valorem? Imagine Understand this very carefully. Imagine you'll go to the market and the price value or the price of this bottle is let's say 100 rupees. Understand this very carefully. The value or price of this bottle is 100. Government will impose GST on the value of the bottle. Is that okay? Government will impose, let's say, a tax on the value of the bottle. And when you're imposing GST on the value of this bottle like this, or any tax for that matter, which will be imposed on the value of the bottle, this is called as ad valorem tax. Any difficulty here, please do let me know right now. That is, if you ask me, sir, can you define what is ad valorem? When the taxes are imposed, I repeat, when the taxes are imposed on the value of the product, value means price of the product, that tax is called as ad valorem tax. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? Ad valorem tax is imposed on the value of the product, on the value of the product. Best example for this is excise duty, which was imposed earlier, VAT, which was imposed earlier, right? So excise duty, for example, how many of you know that when you purchase petrol, you will pay excise duty on the petrol? Please think of it. Right, those of you who are hearing all of this for the first time, next time when you go, check it, how much is the excise duty, etc., etc. When you purchase 1 liter of petrol, excise duty is tax on production. Simple. Many of you have started asking what is excise. Excise duty is nothing but it is a tax on production. It is a tax on production. Excise duty tax is imposed on many products. Tax on production. States generally impose excise duty on these products, right? The government imposes, right, and collects this kind of a duty. Done. Now, what is specific tax? What is specific tax? Look at the bottle very carefully. Please look at the bottle very carefully. What if I impose a tax based on the length of the bottle? Let me know. Right? What if I say a tax on this bottle is imposed on the length of the bottle? Length of the bottle. Right? Can I say this is a physical attribute of the product? Physical attribute of the product. That is, many of you are asking, how can you impose, etc., etc. I'll give you an example. Have you heard of cars which are called as sub 4 meter cars? If you have not heard of it, then you are not reading newspapers correctly. You're not reading newspapers correctly. Why? The tax that is imposed on the cars is based on the length of the car. Is it okay? The tax that is imposed on the car is based on length of the car. Right? That is, if the length of the car is below 4 meters, a different tax is imposed. If the length of the car is above 4 meters, right, a different, right, tax is imposed. Best example. I'll give you one more example. What about cigarettes? Remember car example, right? But just to make it much more clear, what about cigarettes? Right? Don't you think the cigarette's price will change based on the length of the cigarette? Based on the length of the cigarette. Right? So certain products will have a specific length, on that tax will be imposed. Right? Certain other type of cigarette, length will increase, a higher tax is imposed. Right? So based on the length of the cigarette also, government imposes tax. That is one more example. Third example, petrol. Third example is petrol. How so? Many of you then ask me, sir, but you told petrol in case of the first example. Now you are telling about petrol in the second example. Listen to me very carefully. Please listen to me very carefully. On petrol, central government imposes tax, state government also imposes tax. Very simple idea. Right? Central government also imposes a tax, state government also imposes a tax. So there can be both the types of taxes on the petrol. All of you will agree with me? That is, on petrol, you can have ad valorem tax also. You can have specific tax also. Perfectly possible. right? In this case, please remember this, petrol, central government will impose specific taxes. That is for every liter of petrol. I repeat, every liter of petrol, central government will fix a certain price. That is in the form of tax. State governments generally impose percentage on the price of the petrol. Anybody is unable to understand, please do let me know. I'll give a very simple example, right? Again, just to show you the calculation, do not by heart calculation. Central government will basically say, for every 1 liter, I will collect a 10 rupee tax. Can I say this is, right, sorry, per liter? Can I say this is specific tax? Let me know. Central government says for every 1 liter, 10 rupee tax I will collect. Can I call this a specific type of a tax? All of you okay with this? Specific, because per liter, per liter. On the other side, what if the state government says, state government will say taxes will be 20%, right, for right per liter price of the petrol. 20% tax. I'm sorry, not per liter, 20% tax. How? How 20%? Let me show it to you. Please understand this very carefully. Understand this concepts very carefully. First step, you will import crude oil. Right? You will import crude oil into India. We do not manufacture a lot. We do not produce a lot of crude oil. We will import crude oil. And what is crude oil? Crude oil is basically a mixture of all the components. That is, in the crude oil, when you purify it, when you distill it, right, you will basically get petroleum, you will get diesel, you will get naphtha, right, you will get kerosene, you will get aviation turbine fuel, etc. ATF, aviation turbine fuel, etc. In fact, if you remember your high school by the way, do you remember this particular picture? Fractional distillation picture. Let me know in the comment box. Do you remember this particular picture? You will have a picture like this, right? Your faculty or your teacher would have told you different temperatures, temperature here, temperature here, temperature here, and they would simply say at different temperatures you will get different output. Again, for economics it is not needed. All I'm trying to, right, all I'm trying to convey to you people is, right, crude is a mixture of all of them. And when you distill crude at different temperatures, you'll get different output. But the fact is very simple here. Most of the crude we import into India. How much? Around 85% of the crude requirement in India, we import it. Point number one. Point number two, when we import it, there are different stages. That is, first, a refiner, that is a company, will refine. Refine means separate. So obviously they would want certain returns on it. So there is a refiner margins. Cost of refining plus margin. Margin means profit. Then there is, right, basically the petrol bunk owner. Correct? There is a petrol bunk owner. So petrol bunk owner would also want to earn certain margin. So they will also add certain prices. After this, central government will impose a tax. Also, the state government will impose a tax. If you consider all these prices, you will get the market price of petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel, etc. Any problem here? But now understand this very carefully. I'm connecting it to current affairs. In the international market, if I write these as number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. If in the international market, if the cost of the crude will fall down, which also means stage number 1, the price should be lower. Anybody disagrees with me? I'll repeat it again. If in the international market, the price of the crude oil will fall down, which means in the first step itself, the prices should be lower. Prices should come down. All of you will agree with me? But generally what you will see in case of India, I repeat, generally what you will see in case of India, the market price will not fall down by a large number. Market prices will not fall down by a large number. Why? Because if the international prices will fall down, the governments, that is the central government as well as state government, they will increase their taxes. Is it okay? The central government as well as the state government, they will increase their taxes. Central government has to announce a higher tax. State government doesn't even announce it. Understand the logic behind it. Why? I said central government generally announces, let's say, 10 rupees per liter, like this. Specific tax, 10 rupees per liter. So if government of India wants to collect more taxes, they will have to increase this to 15 rupees per liter. All of you will agree? They will have to increase the tax like this. State governments will basically say, whatever is the cost at the refinery plus, let's say, petrol bunk, I will impose 10% tax on it. State government will basically say, whatever is the price, on that I will impose 10% tax. Which means if state governments, if the prices will go down, if the prices in the first step will go down, imagine the margins will remain same. At 10%, the state government will start earning lesser taxes. Right? So what the governments will do at this particular point is, basically they will increase the taxes. They will basically start increasing the taxes. And on the other side, right, on the other side, if in an international market the prices will start increasing, in international market the prices will start increasing, then basically the governments will not do anything. They will allow that to transfer in retail market, and they'll basically say, because the international crude oil prices have gone up, the petrol price, diesel prices, etc. have gone up. Which means, please remember this very carefully, we have introduced the concept of deregulation. In both the case of petrol and diesel, we have introduced the concept of deregulation. Deregulation means what? Government will not fix. Government will not fix the prices. Government will not fix the prices. The prices will be determined by market forces. That is, supply and demand forces will determine what is the price of the product. That is basically the concept of deregulation. So we have deregulated petrol prices, we have deregulated diesel prices. But even today, can I say, because of taxation policy, I'll repeat the statement, even though prices have been deregulated, because of the taxation policy that is there in India, governments will still be having an influence over what is the market price of the fuels. All of you will agree with me? I'll repeat it again. We have deregulated the diesel prices as well as petrol prices, which means government will not fix the price of it. Market will determine what is the price. For example, in case of India, we follow a concept called as dynamic pricing. We have introduced a pricing strategy called as dynamic pricing. What is dynamic pricing? Every day, I repeat, every day, the companies who are selling petrol based on what is the price in the international market will adjust their pricing. Let me know if anybody is finding it difficult. I repeat, what is this concept of dynamic pricing? Every day, based on whatever is the international price, the sellers, that is the OMCs, oil marketing companies, will decide their prices. But don't you think, because the government, that is the central government as well as state government, because they're imposing taxes, though the prices have been deregulated, even today the governments will influence what is the market price of petrol and diesel, aviation turbine fuel, etc. Which means, you tell me, can it be said that the fuel prices have been 100% deregulated in India? Think of it. Are the fuel prices 100% free of, right, the influence of the government? Absolutely no. Right? Even today, the central government and state government impose and collect huge amount of revenue on fuel prices. Why? Please understand that also. Why does the government do this? Right? Are they not worried about demand in the market? You please tell me, do you think the demand for petrol and diesel is elastic? I'm taking the point from the second class. Do you think the demand for petrol and diesel is elastic? No. Petrol and diesel, that is in simple terms, fuels, have inelastic demand. And because they have inelastic demand, don't you think government can change the taxes, adjust the market prices, even then government will continue to earn higher amount of tax revenue? Does it make any sense to you? Okay, is it logical? Government will impose higher taxes, they will collect more revenue, but they know that because there is an inelastic demand, people will continue to consume it. Aggregate demand will not change by much. They'll be able to earn more and more revenues because of that. That is the reason government uses the taxation policies to shore up, to collect a lot of revenues from the fuels. So again, the point is very simple here. Certain taxes are imposed on the value of the product ad valorem. Certain taxes are imposed on physical quantities, physical characteristics, such as length, such as volume. Such taxes are referred to as specific taxes. Right? Taxes are imposed on the physical attributes such as volume, length, etc. Such taxes are specific, also referred to as a per unit taxation. Best example, we have discussed it. But before I go forward, let me give you one more very important point. Always remember this. The ad valorem will provide more flexibility compared to specific taxes. I'll repeat the statement. Please remember this. The ad valorem will provide more flexibility to the government compared to specific taxes. Let me prove it how. Let me prove it how. You will only understand it. Imagine government wants to earn tax of 10 rupee. Imagine the government wants to earn a tax of 10 rupee. Now, one way they can earn a tax of 10 rupee is by imposing specific tax. And another way is by imposing ad valorem. Now understand this. If the price of this bottle, let's say is 100 rupee, now government will impose 10 rupee tax, price is 100, and here government will impose 10% tax. Now all of you okay? Whether this is through example 1 or example 2, government will be able to earn 10 rupee tax. Anybody has a problem? Government will be able to earn 10 rupee tax. Now let's say hypothetically, the price of the bottle will increase to 120 rupees. Price of the bottle will increase to 20 rupees. Government will continue to impose a 10 rupee tax, sell it at 130 rupees, right? Customer will purchase it at 130 rupees. Government will get 10 rupee tax. But on the other side, in ad valorem, can Government of India tell the customer, I will reduce the tax to 8.33%. Understand the logic behind it. Such a beautiful system. Government says, I will reduce the tax from 10% to 8.33% to provide relief to customers. But you please tell me, at 120 rupees, with ad valorem of 8.33%, will government incur a loss in the tax revenues? Use the calculator. If you find calculations difficult, use the calculator. Even at 120 rupees, government will tell you, right, because prices have increased, I don't want to impose 10% tax, I will reduce my taxes to 8.33%. Now calculate at 8.33% at market price of 120, how much will be the tax revenue collected by the government? Can I say government will continue to collect 10 rupees only? So please tell me, where is the flexibility available for the government? government, can I say, can adjust its ad valorem taxes. I repeat, can adjust its ad valorem taxes. Even after adjusting, they will continue to earn, or they may continue to earn the same amount of revenues. So can I say that kind of flexibility is not available in specific, but available in ad valorem taxes. So more flexibility is there for the government. More flexibility, right? Government will have more flexibility in case of ad valorem compared to specific taxes. Remember that. Okay. Done. Let me go to the next system. Right. Let me go to the next system. Surcharge and cess. Surcharge and cess. Point number one. Surcharge and cess both are additional taxes. Please remember the statement. Both are additional taxes. But the surcharge is imposed in addition to existing tax rates in order to reduce income inequality. I'll give you an example, have patience. In order to reduce income inequality. Whereas cesses are the additional taxes which are imposed and collected by the government to achieve certain specific objective. Certain specific objective. For example, I will give you example. You tell me why will the government impose and collect this cess? Krishi Kalyana cess. You tell me what do you think government will do by imposing and collecting Krishi Kalyana cess? Let me know. What do you think will the government do when they will impose and collect Krishi Kalyana cess? Can I say the name itself will indicate that government will collect this amount, use it for providing benefit to agriculture sector? Correct? Will collect it for what purpose? For providing benefit to agriculture sector. I'll give you one more example. Education cess. Let me know. Education cess. What do you think is the use of education cess? Why do you think government will impose and collect education cess? Don't you think that is to promote education sector in India, to promote literacy in India? So I hope you understand the logic behind it. Cesses are imposed, collected by the government for specific objective, to achieve specific objective. Whereas on the other side, surcharges are additional taxes which are imposed and collected to reduce income inequality. Meaning what? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine there are two people, taxpayers A and B. A will earn, let's say, right, 10 lakh rupees per annum. B will earn, let's say, 2 crore rupees per annum. A is earning how much? 10 lakh rupees per annum. B is earning 2 crore rupees per annum. Now you tell me who has the more capacity, who has capacity to pay more taxes to government? Who has right more capacity to pay more taxes to government? Obviously it has to be the second person, that is B. But what if I say government will impose 30% income tax on A and 30% income tax on B? Because the highest rate, I repeat, highest slab rate of income tax in India is 30%. But look at the numbers. Don't you think it is unfair? It is unfair to impose just 30% income tax on B. All of you agree? It is unfair to impose only 30% income tax on the second person, that is B here. Why? B has earned more income. He has capacity to pay more taxes. So government will say, you pay 30% income tax, but in addition to 30%, I will impose more taxes in the name of surcharge. Is the logic okay? All of you okay with this? You pay 30% income tax. Just like A, you pay 30%. But because you have earned more than 1 crore, in fact, in case of India, after 50 lakh rupees, surcharges will kick in. After 1 crore, surcharges are there. After 2 crore, surcharges are there. After 5 crore, surcharges are there. Which means I will pay 30% income tax, but in addition to 30%, I will pay additional tax to the government, which is called as a surcharge. Right? Because it is additional taxes, this is called as a surcharge. It will reduce income inequality. Now, let me ask you one more question. Can I say surcharges are progressive in nature? Let me know. Can I say surcharges are progressive in nature? That is, if you are earning more income, more surcharges are imposed on you. Percentage of surcharge will keep on increasing. Right? So that is basically the idea of a surcharge. Now come to the next important point. The revenues earned by the center through surcharge is solely retained by the center, is not distributed with the states. The point is saved in case of surcharge as well as cesses. Look at the third point in cess as well as surcharge. The proceeds from each cess are first collected in the collected in the consolidated fund of India and then transferred to dedicated fund of the states. Let me explain. Both are similar. Let me explain it. What is the idea? Here is the central government. Here is the central government. Central government will impose and collect surcharges and cess. Surcharges and cess. Whatever amount they have collected in the form of surcharge and cess, all of it will go to central government. Very simple. All of it will go to central government. Now it is up to the central government whether they want to give part of it to the states or they don't want to pay anything out of it to states. All of you okay with this particular point? Please do let me know. Right, I'll repeat it again. Central government imposes and collects surcharges and cesses. It is entirely the power of the central government whether to use all the amount only to itself or give part of it to the states. There is no compulsion on the center to distribute anything. They can keep complete amount only to itself. Sir, why this is so important? I'll give you one more example. Central government will impose and collect income taxes. Do you think central government only will use all the income tax collection? Right? Because under the 7th schedule of Indian Constitution, central government has the power to impose and collect income taxes, corporate taxes, right? Import duties, etc. Customs, in simple terms. Can only central government use all the income taxes collected by the central government? Absolutely no. Please remember that. Only the central government will not be allowed to use. Why? Whenever such taxes are collected, that is the income taxes, corporate taxes, customs duty, etc., etc., part of the collection, I repeat, part of the collection, center has to give it to states. Is it okay? Part of the collection, center has to give it to states, distribute a part of it to the states. Right? That will be decided, that is how much will be given to the states will be decided by the Finance Commission. I'm pretty sure polity classes were right taken up before economy started. So those who have attended polity, I'm pretty sure all of you have come across Finance Commission. So Finance Commission will decide how much part of these taxes will go to the states. And later we'll discuss in detail about it. Right? Which Finance Commission is working today? What is the importance of the Finance Commission? How much percent is going to the states? How states will get a part of it, etc. We'll discuss that later. But this is not applicable to surcharges and cess. Imagine central government will impose and collect 200 crore rupee worth surcharges and cess. That 200 crore, only central government can use it, or They will distribute. Again, no compulsion. It is entirely the power of the central government. They might give part of it to the states. There is no compulsion on it. That is basically associated with concept of surcharges and cess. Done? Now, last concept for the day. Very simple concept. Listen carefully. Anti-dumping, countervailing, and safeguard. Anti-dumping, countervailing, and safeguard. What is this anti-dumping, countervailing, and safeguard? I'll discuss with example. Please listen carefully. Listen first. Let me start with anti-dumping. Let's start. I am a manufacturer in China. You are a manufacturer in India. Both of us are manufacturing bottles. Both of us are manufacturing bottles. Whatever the price that you are manufacturing, let's say it is 100 rupees. You are able to manufacture this bottle at 100 rupee. I am also able to manufacture somewhere in the range of 100 rupee. Now I will export it to rest of the world. I will export this bottle to rest of the world at 100 rupee. When I will export to India, I will export it at 90 rupee. All of you okay with this? You are able to manufacture at 100. I am also able to manufacture at 100. I will export the bottle to other countries at 100 rupee. But to India, I will export it at 90 rupee. Now, simple question to you people. You tell me, will there be a demand for your bottle or my bottle in India? Very simple question. Will there be a demand for your bottle or my bottle? All of you will agree? Because I'm selling it at 90 rupees. Is it okay? Because I'm selling it at 90 rupees in India, automatically there'll be a higher demand for it in India. And as a result of this, what will happen to your supply? What will happen to your revenue? What will happen to your profitability? Right? Don't you think all of it will be affected? Right? Now, please understand this. What is the actual cost of my bottle? What is the actual cost? Actual cost, or let's say in rest of the world. In rest of the world, I am exporting it at 100. In the rest of the world, I'm exporting it at 100. But when I will export it to India, am I reducing the price? Am I suppressing the price? This is called as dumping. This is called as dumping. Any problem with this? This is called as dumping. Many of you will ask me, sir, why are they dumping the product? They are dumping the product in order to ensure that their product will have a higher demand in India compared to your product. Right? Very simple logic. Their product demand will be very high compared to your product. Now, should government of India accept this? Think of it. Should government of India accept this? Government of India will not accept it. So government will say, because you are dumping the products in India, artificially you are suppressing the prices, you are dumping the products in India, I will impose a tax on the product which is called as anti-dumping duty. Impose a tax on it. Now please tell me, if government will impose a tax of 9 rupee, 10 rupee, 11 rupee on this bottle, when it will come into India, don't you think market price of the bottle automatically will start increasing? All of you will agree? Right? Whatever was the right dumping that was done, that impact of dumping will be negated by the government taxes. Hence called as anti-dumping duty. Come to the second one, countervailing duty. All the three are different. Listen to the examples carefully. All the three are different. Let's say, same example. I want to sell the bottle to India at 100 rupee. Right? I want to sell this bottle to India at 100 rupee. Export it to India at 100. But my government, I repeat, my government will give me a subsidy of 10 rupee. Now please tell me, if I receive a subsidy of 10 rupee from the government, don't you think automatically I will reduce the price of bottle to 90 rupees here? All of you will agree? Anybody has a problem? If government will give me 10 rupee, right, basically I will reduce the price of this bottle to 90. Now you are supplying at 100 rupees in India. I will export it at 90 rupees to India. What will happen to the demand for my bottle? Start increasing. Your activity would be affected. My revenue will start increasing. Demand for my product will be higher. Your product will be lower. So again, government of India will look at it and say, I am able to sell more because I'm getting subsidies from the government. Is it okay? I'm able to sell more because I'm getting subsidies from the government. So government of India will impose taxes on my bottle, which is called as countervailing duty. Right? This countervailing duty is also referred to as anti-subsidy duty. This is also referred to as anti-subsidy duty. All of you okay with this? What is the background to it? Why it is different compared to anti-dumping duty, etc., etc.? All are not one and the same. Very difficult. Okay, I'll explain it again. Listen carefully, Baba. Please listen carefully. Point number one. If I get a subsidy, if you're a manufacturer, if you get a subsidy, will you reduce the market price of the product or not? You tell me that. Let's go point by point. All of this we have discussed earlier also in GDP. If you're a manufacturer, if you receive a subsidy, will you reduce the market price of the product? Yes, remember that point. Now I'm saying, Array, you're not listening. That's the reason you will get all of this doubt. I am manufacturing in China. Bottle cost is 100. I want to export it at 100. I will receive a subsidy of 10 rupees from the Chinese government. At least now it is clear. I will receive the subsidy from the Chinese government. Now, when I receive the subsidy of 10 rupees from the Chinese government, actually 100, but I will export it at 90. Right? I'll export it at 90. So as a result of this, demand for the product will be very high. Your sales will be affected. Government of India will find out that I am receiving subsidy from Chinese government. So they will impose a tax which is called as countervailing duty. And the third one, safeguard duty. Last 1 minute. It's very basic idea, safeguard duty. I'm a manufacturer who will get access to cheaper raw material. I will get access to cheaper labor. I will get access to cheaper technology. Now tell me, because of cheaper raw material, labor, etc., can I say I'll be able to produce this bottle at a lower cost, export this to India at a lower cost? All of you will agree with me? Because I'm more competitive compared to you, I'm more competitive. I'm getting labor at lower cost. I'm getting raw material at a lower cost. So I'm more competitive. I'll produce at a lower cost, export it to India. Now, because of this, what do you think will happen to imports into India? What will happen to imports into India? Right? Imports into India will suddenly increase. Imports into India will suddenly increase. That will affect your manufacturing. That will affect your production. That will affect your revenue also. So government of India, in order to protect domestic manufacturing, will impose a tax on the sudden imports that have come into India, which is called as safeguard duty. Is it okay? So all the three are different. I'll repeat it. Please listen carefully. First case, the exporter will purposely reduce the price to India and rest of the world sell it at same price. That is called as a dumping. government will impose a tax which is called as anti-dumping. Second example, exporter will receive subsidy from the country's government, and because of the subsidy the product becomes cheaper and starts exporting to India. So government of India will find out that I'm getting subsidy and government will impose a tax which is called as countervailing duty. Third example or third one, I will get cheaper raw material compared to you. I'll get cheaper labor compared to you. Automatically, my products are cheaper compared to your product. So that is the precise reason more exports will come from my country and your country will receive lot of imports. Imports will suddenly increase into India. And as a result of this, you will be affected. In order to protect you, government of India will impose a tax on me, which is called a safeguard duty. Okay, that is basically idea of a safeguard, countervailing, anti-dumping. Last point for the day, the authority which will conduct investigation. Many of you are asking, so how will government come to know all of it? There is an authority. The name of the authority is DGTR, Directorate General of Trade Remedies. The Directorate General of Trade Remedies will conduct investigation and will impose a tax based on whether this is anti-dumping, whether this is countervailing, or this is basically safeguard duty. But again, when I say it will impose, it is not the DGTR which will impose the taxes. It will investigate, give the recommendation to Finance Ministry. It will investigate, give the recommendation to Finance Ministry. Finance Ministry will announce all these taxes. Okay, done. So these are the three types of additional taxes that can be imposed on the imports: anti-dumping, countervailing, as well as safeguard duty. So that's it from my side for today. If you have any kind of questions, please do let me know so that we can have a discussion. Then we can wind up the session for the day. Is it the same type of safeguard duty that the Europeans used to impose on the Indian goods in 19th century? You'll have to be very specific. I don't know which kind of tax you're talking about. Okay. Can state also impose cess and surcharges? Some of the states are allowed to impose, but again, very, very few. Generally, it is imposed by the central government. Can GDP deflator be less than 1? If there is a recession, or let's say if there is a deflation, yes, you can get a GDP deflator of less than 1. Okay. Meaning of deflator 2.3, it simply means because of inflation, GDP has increased by 130%. That is the meaning of GDP deflator of 2.3. Will CSR come under surcharge? No. CSR is a compulsory contribution now. There is a law. For CSR, there is a law. If a company meets certain parameters, then compulsorily 2% of their net profits, they will have to use it for certain purposes. That is basically CSR. Safeguard. I'll repeat it again. Because my products are more competitive. My product is more competitive. More competitive means my product is cheaper. Why is my product cheaper? Labor is cheaper for me, right? Or let's say the raw material is cheaper for me. Because of that, my product is cheaper. Suddenly, exports from my country, right? Exports from my country will increase, or imports into your country will increase. And government, in order to protect you, will impose a tax on me, which is called a safeguard. Okay. Ad valorem in specific. Ad valorem means on the value of the product. On the value of the product, tax would be imposed. 100 rupee, 200 rupee, that's a value. Whereas specific means either based on the length of the product, based on volume of the product, the government will impose a tax, which is called as a specific tax. In recession calculation, 2 quarter previous year quarter comparison or what? My dear, if you say recession, I'll give a very simple example. If you say recession, let's say second quarter, third quarter of current financial year, that is financial year 24, financial year 24. There is a negative growth rate, there is negative growth rate. But compared to what? Compared to second quarter of financial year 23, third quarter of financial year 23. You'll make a comparison. If the GDP growth rate is negative, this is called as a recession. Okay. Example, if my income go above 1 crore, then on which income surcharge is imposed? The surcharge is given generally in terms of percentages. Let's say hypothetically, you'll have to pay 20 lakh rupees. I'm just taking arbitrary number. Let's say you'll have to pay 20 lakh rupees in the form of income taxes. Government will impose surcharge on this 20 lakh rupees. Government will impose a surcharge on this 20 lakh. Let's say surcharge is 10%, which means you will have to pay 20 lakh rupees plus you will also have to pay 2 lakh rupees. That is 10% of 20 lakh. That is how surcharge is actually imposed. What are the examples of a specific? And my dear, it is there in the slide. If you are not reading, if you are not able to see, then very, very bad then. It is there in the slide. I've discussed it. VAT, right? The taxation on petroleum, car, etc. Okay. Okay, done then. So let me stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow we'll continue with the different types of direct taxes, different types of indirect taxes. So please revise, read the current affairs. We'll see or we will meet again tomorrow sharp at 5 p.m. Take care. Good night.